Welcome back to the party, everybody. This is Morty, and I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Everybody hit that like and subscribe. You know I would do it for you. And let's party! Big shout out to the replay gang. Thank you so much for coming back to watch this, even though you missed the live party. Guys, that is the best part. So make sure you're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes whenever I feel like it. So hit that subscribe, ring the bell, and you will never miss an Indian Jesus live party ever again. Let's also say thank you to my6shirt.com, the only place to get your very own the Indian Jesus merch. We got new designs coming out for Christmas. Let's party. Let's party. We got Red in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. So this is going to be an interesting one indeed. I'm always a little nervous with you guys when I bring anything religious. So here we have one of my favorite atheist YouTubers that we've talked about before, Alex O'Connor, aka Cosmic Skeptic, and is sitting down with the one, the only Ben Shapiro, and they are discussing the question: is religion good or bad for society? So this is gonna be a little bit different because typically when we're talking about religion, I am talking about, is this true? Are these claims true? Does God exist? So on and so forth. But the question here is different this time. The question is religion good or bad for society? As always, guys, if you cannot hear the video, please do let me know. All right, so we're going to solve it tonight, guys. We are solving it tonight. As it goes, brother. Shout out to the Camcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. That is unfortunately as loud as it goes, but I think they are talking a lot louder than the moderator here. But welcome, welcome, welcome to the... Oh, there's no sound. Okay, well, that's different than turning it up. Take two. And you can see the captions there. They're just, doing the introductions and
of who you are.
Good, no good, no good. Let me know. Shout out to Dan, the man, Denson, a pillar of this community. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. All right. Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Thank you, sir.
Fanboy.
So let's
ethics based on. So without further ado, let's start. I'm not going to go into backstory too much because most people will be aware of who you are, and there'll be a lot of
So this, of course, it moves to the other guy, but obviously we know Ben. We know Ben Shapiro, but the other guy on the left here is Cosmic Skeptic, aka Alex O'Connor. Went to Oxford, very smart dude. Does debates and talks about philosophy all over the world, actually, but especially in the U.S. and the U.K.
Story too much because most people will be aware of who you are, and there'll be a lot of fanboys and girls out there watching. But let's talk about something that, Ben, you have spoken on, and Alex, you have responded to, this idea of the atheist delusion. Ben, could you sort of concisely, if you can, talk about what you mean by the atheist delusion?
Sure. So the atheist delusion. All right. Ben Shapiro's the atheist delusion.
I should start off by saying I don't actually think that it's possible to prove the existence of God. I'm also not a believer that you can disprove the existence of God. I don't think that logical argumentation is going to get you there one way or another. And so I'm not going to try and do that with Alex today because I think that...
And again, this is, that's definitely a conversation that I love having. I'll do it all day. But that is not what we are looking to do here. Prove this exists or doesn't exist. Is religion good for society?
People would have been able to provide dispositive proofs, then people would believe them. And if people were able to provide dispositive proofs that God does not exist, then people would be more apt to believe those as well.
No lube.
What I think is an atheist delusion is that it is possible to live ideologically purely in a way that does not rely on fundamental faith principles. I say faith.
And again, I am going to agree with Ben that you cannot live as a moral person without these fundamental faith principles. That gets us nowhere. That just means be a good person. So I'm expecting Alex to agree that the values that we have come from religion and religions in general. But again, that is not what we are talking about today. Hey, shout out to Dan Jensen starting off the show hot with our pumpkin flavored. Is it pumpkin? Duck flavored duck recipe. And as you guys know, every single super chat comes with a treat for Morty. Thank you, sir. And of course, that makes you the new sponsor of the stream. Thank you so much, sir. We also got Zippy in the building. What is good? Welcome to the party. Thank you again, Dan.
Principles, we're not going to in a way that does not rely on fundamental faith principles. When I say faith principles, we're not going to make the claim that those faith principles are direct from Sinai or that those faith principles require the New Testament, for example. I'm going to make the claim that there are a bunch of principles upon which we base ourselves that are external to what we know about nature and evolutionary biology. And that many of the things that Alex does in his daily life, for example, are going to be things that rely on principles that are external to a philosophy that would assume a lack of the supernatural, a lack of the extra natural. So some of those principles, for example, are free will. So every day we get up, we believe, virtually all of us, whether we...
Those of you who know that you're smuggling in an a priori claim that free will exists. It very well may, but you have not proven that. And so we don't have to prove the existence of God to prove whether or not religion is good for society. But if you're taking free will as a starting point, and I don't believe in free will, well, then we haven't gotten anywhere.
Whether we say we believe it or not, we actually act in ways that betray the idea that we believe that we have control over our own actions, at least to a certain extent, and that control makes a difference in the world. And that's what gives us purpose. It's what allows us to wake up in the morning and make the decision to do what we believe is right or what we believe is wrong. That the principles of right and wrong are external to evolutionary biology. So both of these principles that I've mentioned already, free will, right and wrong, these come from a language that is external to the Darwinian language of evolutionary biology. If you're talking about free will, there is nothing in nature that suggests the ability to make a decision free of environment and genetics in combination.
Okay, so it sounds like he does agree with my understanding of free will, that it cannot exist because everything is based on environment and genetics. That everything is predetermined based on the physics and the chemical reactions and the electricity and all that stuff. It sounds like he's agreeing with that. Let's check that. Let's back it up.
In language of evolutionary biology, if you're talking about free will, there is nothing in nature that suggests the ability to make a decision free of environment and genetics in combination.
Yeah, so he's just saying that we're trying to define what free will is, because that's his starting point. That if we have free will, then you're acting as if you are religious, and then even if you don't believe in a particular God, you're still being religious. Essentially, is what Ben's argument is right now. And it's a strong argument, but it's a long video, and if it was going to be over there, it would have been over there.
Some sort. The same thing is true of right and wrong. The idea that there is a right and there is a moral wrong that we can reason our way to. Another principle that I think that you're obviously very big on. It's something that you rely on all the time. Your entire podcast is based on the idea of reason.
Again, so now we have two things that religious people are going to say, well, we don't know why God said this is right and this is wrong, but we know that God said this is right and this is wrong. Whereas the atheist or let's just say the secular individual is going to look to the reasons. Why do we not want to hurt each other? Why do we not want to steal things from each other? And come to laws and values and stuff from that way.
These ideas do not exist in the context of a purely materialist atheist universe. Now, I'm not going to make the claim that I can prove that it's God who's behind those things, because one of the principles of faith belief is that I don't understand God.
And that's the biggest mistake that so many religious people make when they are trying to make this specific argument, that even if you don't believe, religion is still good for society, if that's your position. I forgot exactly what he said. What did he say? Hold on.
Those things, because one of the principles of faith belief is that I don't understand God.
Right. So the idea that, we can't understand this. So the logic and reasoning and rationality behind it isn't our mode of understanding this. It's faith. He says, religion is just a form of comprehension, a basic form of natural science. Man learns everything from nature after all. Great.
So for people who don't believe in God, that's an easy way out, right? That's an easy way out for people like me, because I say, well, I don't have to explain the relationship between God and free will, because frankly, I don't fully understand God. But that's not really that's not really an open window. That's just part of pretty much all faith systems.
I agree with him, but what did he say? I'm not trying to prove that, and that's one step towards the American identity that I talk about. And real quick, if you haven't heard it before, I believe that that as so many conservatives want to come back to religion and God and Jesus and all that stuff, there's too many people who have who have conservative values, but simply cannot believe in a God, and so trying to force morality to be the same as God is not working, and it's turning a lot of people into leftists. So with Ben saying that he realizes all of this stuff can't be nailed down by logic, reason, science, etc., is one step above or one step ahead of most people who say, oh, it's Jesus or nothing. It's Jesus or nothing. So he says religion is half built on tradition, which is built off pragmatism, lessons learned from nature. Yep. Bingo. It says, in my opinion, religion is pretty much saying, oh, water? Yeah, the God named Susu made that. Pretty much. And I mean, obviously, it gets way deeper than that. And there's a lot of beautiful lessons that you can learn from religion. But at the end of the day, this is what it is. It's just creating stories to fill in the gaps of knowledge. We don't know how this thing happened, but we still need a guide of hierarchies and such to guide us. So we're just going to hobcobble this together, and in 5 centuries, this will be the way that it's always been done. And so now whether it's true or not is irrelevant, because we're shifting the goalpost to, well, my granddaddy did this, and my granddad's believe this. So, and that becomes the new argument. Guys, can I ask you a favor for just 3 more likes? We got 7 people, just 2 likes, just 3 more likes, please. Thank you. Shout out to Guam Tech in the building. Welcome to the party. Super interested in this convo. It's gonna be a good one, brother. I'm very excited to hear what you have to say about this. Welcome. Zippy says, like with science, when dogma comes into the equation, you start randomly killing and maiming people because reasons. Without dogma, there is no force, thus can be no harm. So it doesn't mean that without dogma there can be no harm. It just means it. But you hit on the first part, is that with dogma, violence is imminent. With dogma, violence is imminent. Because unless everybody has the same dogma, which is not going to happen, then you have this dogma that conflicts with this dogma, and these people think that they're right, and these people think they're right, and it's an impasse. It's crazy.
That if my mind were the mind of God, then I would either be God or God would not exist, one of the two things. So the idea that reason makes a difference in our lives, that we can reason our way to propositions, and that's more than just saying a few magic words and that's setting off a few neurons in somebody else's brain in a naturalistic way, that there actually is principles of truth, another concept that comes from the extra natural world, that these principles exist. So far I've mentioned free will, good, right and wrong, reason and truth, right?
So free will, right and wrong, reason and truth. So those are and I like that he surmised that at the end. So that's what Alex now has to deal with. The free will aspect. Do we have free will? Is there a difference between right and wrong? How do we know that difference? And where does reason and truth fall into this thing that he is claiming has to do with faith and is specifically not something to do with truth and reason? So he says harm tends to spread faster and more strongly via force. Without force, it remains localized and localized and scarce. The scale of harm is mitigated. Oh, definitely. It's just you got to be careful when you're saying without dogma there can be no harm. That's you don't want to go too far in the other direction, right? But I am on the same page as you, sir.
Right, all things that we consider extremely key in our daily lives,
there
and that Alex considers key in what he does. It's, I assume, why you get up every morning, or at least why you feel you get up every morning. what gets you up to do your podcast. It's because you want to say things that you believe are reasonable, are going to convince people to act in a better way, or I assume not a worse way, that get people to change their lives in some way in a self-motivated fashion. That's not merely in a sort of Pavlovian response to circumstance and environment.
Put a 1 in the chat if you don't know what Pavlovian response is.
So if I were going to talk about the atheist delusion, that's what I would suggest is the delusion, that an atheist can use terminology that is drawn from a world that is external to atheism for itself. And again, that's not an argument for God even. That's just an argument against atheism. Again, I think the arguments against God are fairly compelling, and I think the arguments against atheism are fairly compelling. This is one of the things that I've said to Sam Harris. And I think that the difference is that most people who believe in God have expressed doubts, and a lot of people who are atheists tend to be more religious in this way than many of the people who are God believers.
I hate that line. Like, oh, it takes more faith to be an atheist. No, it literally takes zero faith. But the notion of trying to make this my ideology is right, my beliefs are right, and therefore you have to listen to me, is the wrong approach. And so shout out again to Ben for coming to the table with a way to discuss religion and culture and society that's not the same old tired arguments of, well, God works in mysterious ways and this and da. You know exactly what to fill in there, because we hear it over and over and over and over. Even if you are religious, even if you do believe in any religion, especially the Abrahamic religions, you know what they're going to say. You know what they're going to say.
Believers.
So let's back that up a little bit. Get that one.
God are fairly compelling, and I think the arguments against atheism are fairly compelling. This is one of the things that I've said to Sam Harris, and I think,
yeah, just meaning that, hey, it makes a lot of sense if you want to use your logic and reason and determine that God doesn't exist. That makes sense to me. However, being Ben, that makes sense to me, Ben Shapiro. But as Ben Shapiro, I choose to have to engage in faith and believe in Judaism.
I think that the difference is that most people who believe in God have expressed doubts, and a lot of people who are atheists tend to be more religious in this way than many of the people who are God believers.
Well, something.
So Grontek says, I feel like religion is just a quicker and easier way to guide yourself towards a better life, both for you and with others. Some people take the belief in their deity more seriously than the lessons. Well said, sir. I think that is that. Yeah, I mean, wholeheartedly agree. I think that, especially a quicker and easier way to guide yourself towards a better life. The issue is that it's not in my opinion, at least, it's not the best way to guide yourself towards a better life. And that's kind of been a big thing that when this comes up, what I've been talking about is the acceptance of whatever dogma you have means that that's the end of the conversation as to learning more about what it all is. When you say, oh, it's God, then that's the end of the conversation. What is God? Well, God's just like an energy, and then it just goes into whatever you feel like, which sounds kind of familiar to what is a woman. Dogma is not good. It helps the refined process that kind of half works. It definitely works. It's just not the best way to guide yourself towards a better life. Like I said, just a quick hand for here's some rules. They worked for a lot of people for a long time. Give it a try. Yeah. And again, it's not that it doesn't work. The question is it the best way to go forward? And I say no.
Certain. We don't do cold opens or soft starts here on the big conversation. Alex.
Well, I am glad to begin on a point of agreement with you, Ben, that yes, if there is no God, there is no free will. But I think that's because of the truth of the latter of those statements. That I suppose the biggest criticism that I've made of you in a video response that I made to the atheist delusion, and this show does seem to have an extraordinary capacity for putting me face to face with people that I've been talking smack about online. So thanks again.
By the way, I should say it's a great video, and everybody should watch it if they haven't.
Well, I'm going to put that in the description.
Oh, it's so sweet.
The principal disagreement that I think I had with you, Ben, is that there was a subtle or not so subtle implication in my view that yes, with no God, there's no free will, but somehow having God can solve this problem. I mean, you said a moment ago that you don't think you can establish God's existence through reason alone, but assuming that you do believe in the existence of free will, you think it's a real thing that you have.
Yes.
And simultaneously saying that if there is no God, then free will makes no sense.
Yes.
That does read to me like an argument for God's existence, such that
Not only does it read like an argument, but it very easily fits into, yeah, I don't believe we have free will or a God. And so if free will cannot exist without a God, and we don't have a God, then all that means to me is that we all agree that there is no God and there's no free will. Context said there is no best way. There are best ways, and we should be open to learning from all of them. I mean, I feel like that's a little semantic. I feel like we're saying the same thing, but fair enough, fair enough.
in order to either say that there is free will, in order to say that there is free will, one must believe in God, and that does strike me as an argument for God's existence.
And that's not the case in a vacuum, but that's how Ben laid it out. That because we have this free will, that is a reason that we can point to God. So he is correct, and that if there's no free will, then there's no God. That's a rebuttal that knocks down his argument.
To slightly curve that, or to kind of sand off the rough edges there, I would say that the argument I made is an argument for something extra natural.
Sure.
Now you can call that God or not God, but the thing that I'm making the argument for is that you cannot get from a materialist Darwinist universe to free will. That is not possible. So I know that the way you solve that is that you say that there is no free will.
That's right.
And what I'm saying to you,
Oh, well, hello. What's struggle streaming? Struggle streaming. My whole thing just went down. Yeah, struggle streaming is right. I think my entire internet. No, it's on. What the hell?
So Ben Shapiro.
Oh, no. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay, we're coming back. We're coming back. We're coming back. All right. All right. All right. Well. All right. Okay. All right. We are back. We are back. All right. Give me 1 second here. Jesus, I have no idea what happened. My entire internet just went out. And that was not fun. That was not fun. Of course, I get a mini heart attack every single time. All right. Share screen with audio. And let's just back
Have
up.
a very substantive conversation. I'm going to
All right. Did we miss anything? No. All right. Moving on.
introduce them first. I'm going to give a little.
Oh, come on.
Biggest criticism that I made of you in a video.
atheism. Again, I think the arguments against one of the things that I've said to Sam Harris.
The criticism that I made of you in a video response that I made to the atheist delusion, and this show does seem to have an extraordinary capacity for putting me face to face with people that I've been talking smack about
All
online.
right, that's close enough. But no, I was testing because I'm trying to get Rumble up and running, and it ain't working. But soon enough. Thank you for sticking around, guys. Let's dive back in.
Thanks again.
By the way, I should say it's a great video, and everybody should watch it if they haven't.
Well, I'm going to put that in the description. I think that glowing endorsement. The principal disagreement that I think I had with you, Ben, is that there was a subtle or not so subtle implication, in my view.
Okay, so he was basically saying, that's an
At a moment-
argument for God, and he's saying basically, yeah.
Well,
As
I mean,
an argument for God's existence.
Okay.
For God's existence. If there is no God, then free will makes no sense.
Yes.
That does read to me like an argument for God's existence, such that in order to either say that there is free will, in order to say that there is free will, one must believe in God, and that does strike me as an argument for God's existence.
Yeah. So before we move on, Zippy has a great question here. How do you quantify or a free will going against nature? And so it's it's not something that you would necessarily measure. It's a more philosophical concept than a scientific one, but it's an idea that your consciousness is untethered to anything else and can make decisions unaffected by anything. And the fact that you don't choose your parents, you don't choose where you're born, you don't choose any of these things, the idea that you could make these decisions and those things that you didn't choose that are going to have direct effect on how you view the world, see the world, all that kind of stuff, just doesn't, it's a concept that doesn't make sense. So there's no thing that I'm measuring and saying, is there 5 free wills or 0 free wills? It's just the notion of your consciousness acting without any other environmental factors. And as Ben said, he understands that when it comes to reason and logic, we can't explain that. It's like saying, how do you quantify Zeus's existence? It's like, well, we don't know. It's more of a conceptual thing. I mean, I guess that was a bad example, but yeah, it's not something that you test and measure. It's a conceptual thing.
Free will, one must believe in God, and that does strike me as an argument for God's existence.
I mean, to slightly curve that, or to kind of sand off the rough edges there, I would say that the argument I made is an argument for something extra natural.
Sure.
Now you can call that God or not God, but the thing that I'm making the argument for is that you cannot get from a materialist Darwinist universe to free will. That is not possible. So I know that.
Okay, so how do you know that? Now we're getting into how you're making claims. The question is whether or not religion is good for society. But now you're making claims about what you can and cannot know. How is it that you came to understand the limits of human knowledge? You don't have that knowledge. You can't make the claim that humans cannot know a thing. You don't know the limit of human knowledge. Context said, this is why I was happy that Daily Wire brought in JBP. When Ben says, I live because God exists, JBP says, I live as though God exists. Such a pretentious way to practice your religion. Pretentious, but I mean, that's the way it should be. You don't know, so you live as though a God exists. I mean, works for me. Works for me.
The way you solve that is that you say that there is no free will.
That's right.
And what I'm saying to you is you don't act that way.
I hear this all the time. People say, look, you may say there's
too.
no free will, but you don't act as though that's the case.
What does that even mean?
I suppose that I'm just confused as to what it would look like for somebody to act as if they believe there was no free will. I mean, the very argument that there is no free will that I subscribe to, at least one of the various forms that it takes, is a sort of Schopenhauerian.
Oh, I missed that. Less pretentious. You're right.
View that you can do as you will, you just can't will what you will. And that you are essentially just a biological machine reacting to its to its internal and evolutionary drives.
Yep.
That's what's happening. Now, call that nihilistic if you like, that's a separate question. But as to the question of how this would make one act, the idea that this might cause us to sort of lay around in bed all day or something, the very mechanism that I think is responsible for eliminating the possibility of free will, that is, the drives that make people do what they do, like I say, do exactly that. Make people do what they do. They make them get out of bed in the morning. Mm-hmm. Why do you get out of bed and go and make your breakfast if there's no free will? So you go and get breakfast because there's no free will and something is driving you to do that that's outside of your control.
Interesting. So the reason that you get up is not because you have the free will. It's specifically because you have things in your life, in your environment, in your whatever, that make you get up. You have a job to go to because you can't, you can't pay rent. You can't, go down the list. Even if it's on the weekend and you mean to sleep in, but your neighbors are blasting music at 6 a.m. There's no free will there. Gontek said, to be honest, this set is 10 out of 10 with the slow camera pan. I've been noticing it too. I love it. Shout out to Premiere Unbelievable. Never heard of them before, but
for sure. So
doing the damn thing.
To get back to the nihilism point, which you kind of put aside. So that means that this conversation is essentially worthless in any sort of real sense. I mean, effectively, we were driven here by evolutionary biology and environment to have this conversation. Everybody who's watching this is driven by evolutionary biology and environment to have a particular reaction to that thing, and ever round the cycle goes.
Yup. Why does that mean that we can't try to understand things within the context of, despite the fact that we don't have free will, we feel like we have free will and we have desires and wants, even if we don't choose those desires and wants, we still have desires and wants.
That seems like a very purposeless life. Maybe again, I'm drawing from a realm that is not evolutionarily biologically, connected.
It is a purposeless life. Your life has zero purpose. And so you can spend a long time, as a lot of people do, being very upset about this very real thing that there is no purpose to you. Or You can sit with it, accept it, and come to the place where there's no purpose for me to be here. I can do whatever I want. And especially if you have morality paired with that, well, I can go and help whoever I want to help. I can go create the most beautiful art and all that, whatever. Exactly. That's exactly what it is, Ben.
Ever round the cycle goes. That seems like a very purposeless life. Maybe again, I'm drawing from a realm that is not evolutionarily biologically, connected. The word purpose is really, teleology obviously has been taken out of the realm of science pretty thoroughly by atheists and by many people in the sciences. Although I would argue that, again, most scientists speak in the realm of teleology literally all the time, and they're borrowing language from the language of teleology, even when they're describing functions of particular body parts, right? The heart pumps blood in order to keep you alive, right? They're constant.
Is it just me, or does Ben seem a little, not nervous, but just like, I don't know, he just doesn't seem as confident as he usually does? No? Is that just me?
Using language that's teleological in nature. The real question that I have, and this is what goes to the question that you were asking at the beginning, before the sort of pre-question question, which was the good of religion to society. One of those goods is people believing that their free will matters, and this actually is a useful thing. So I believe that it is deeply important for people in society to believe that they have the capacity to change themselves and to make different decisions than what biology would drive them to. So
okay, from right there, people need to believe that they can change. Great, agree.
in the morning, which is
Am I still there? I can't see what is even going on. Oh my goodness. Frozen. Yep. Welcome to the party. We are struggle streaming a little bit. I don't know what is going on here. You know what? Can I do this? I think I'm just going to do a restart, guys. I think I'm going to do a restart. Fuck it. Boom. No? God damn it. All right. Hold on. Struggle streaming. Ask me anything, guys. We got about a minute before we come back in. Did I miss this one? Zippy said, it sounds like in a Darwinist materialistic universe that free will is going against nature, i.e. going against instinct. Okay. That's a little, that's a little bit closer to what to what I would think is a more practical use of free will, that there's other factors driving your behavior external to your body. That makes sense. Gontex. So there are two types of nihilism. One, if there's no point, then why bother? Two, if there's no point, then why not? Oh, that's not working either. Oh, okay, I was got. Basically, the choice is do nothing or do something with your meaningless life. Exactly, brother. Exactly. That is 100% the choice that you have, because the oh no, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. What is going on? Fuck. Connection was interrupted. I don't know what to do. Hold on. All right, let's try this. Let's see if we can go from the. No, that's not what I wanted. I'm gonna try and use the hotspot. This is hell. Why is this happening to me? Come on, baby. We working it. Thank you so much for hanging out, guys. I know this is not ideal. Oh, are we back? We're back. All right. Jesus Christ. Cheers to that. All right. Oh, remember this used to happen all the goddamn time? How infuriating. And of course, I'm sure the history is not going to get exactly where we left off, because that would just be too easy. That would just be too goddamn easy.
Calvinist and in sort of the way that it's described, right? It's like you're predestined to get out of bed in the morning, so thus.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Let's see here. Zippy said, without free will, a drug addict would never get off drugs. Did it? Because the biological machine has severely damaged and been forced to a new normal, i.e. free will allows you to drastically change. No. So again, as a former drug addict, then I can tell you, obviously, this is not true because I am no longer on drugs. But the difference comes from where why was I doing drugs one day and the next day I wasn't? That's the question you need to be asking yourself. And so there's something different between the day that I decided to continue doing those drugs and the day that I decided to stop. And I'm using the language I decided, but again, why was that decision made? I guess is a better way to say that. There was something going on that in my body, in my mind, in my consciousness that was like, okay, we're not about this anymore, because everything else is exactly the same. So it has to be the case that you can change yourself without needing a God or anything supernatural. That has to be the case because I did it.
Believe that they have the capacity to look for the question, which was,
Yes. I'm not dealing with it. Nope. Actually, should I bring this downstairs? Yeah, let's do that. I'll bring my laptop downstairs. This is so frustrating. I am going to murder. I can't say that on the internet. Ugh. Hold on. Of course, it's always when I have the best shows. When we're doing the one with PBD and the detransitioners, I was like, oh, I'm so excited for this one, and the audio wasn't working and all that. Now this one, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. And what do we get? Super struggle like a mother. And of course, I left the laptop on, and now I turned it off. What is happening? Oh my God. All right. Give me a minute, guys. I'm here. We're doing the damn thing. We're doing it. All right. I'm saying, so honestly, what is this? Come on. Honestly, you could easily have this conversation without the reaction of need be. Well, I mean, specifically the things that they are talking about is what I wanted to show you guys, and how at a different level, there between Ben and Alex, they're very high level. So I mean, we really have only scratched the surface of what they're talking about, and they get into stuff that's a little bit deeper. That it's not just me like preaching at you. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna figure this out. Give me a second here. Give me a second. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. I'm having a heart attack in my head right now. Oh, yep, a heart attack in my head. That's how that works. I don't have any more plugs. What the fuck? Of course. Okay. Jesus. All right, we're here. Hey. Shout out to Zippy the Strange. Thank you so much, brother. All right, let's make sure you're on camera. Thank you, brother. I really do appreciate that. All right, we're here. We good. We good. Oh.
So you say, well, it's biology that drives you to get out of bed. Which was the good of religion to society. One of those goods is the sort of right? They're constantly using language that's teleological in nature. The real question that I have, and this is what goes to the question that you were asking at the beginning, before the sort of pre-question question, which was the good of religion to society. One of those goods is people believing that their free will matters, and this actually is a useful thing. So I believe that it is deeply important for people in society to believe that they have the capacity to change themselves and to make different decisions than what biology would drive them to do. So you say, well, it's biology that drives you to get out of bed in the morning, which is almost Calvinist in sort of the way that it's described, right? It's like you're predestined to get out of bed in the morning, so thus you get out of bed in the morning. But the reality is that we are constantly making decisions as though those decisions make a difference in the universe. And what social science actually does tend to show is that when people believe that they have control over their own actions, and when they believe that they're capable of changing the way that they live.
Okay. Well, let's just real quick. Can you hear me? Can you hear the video? That is all I need to know. Can you hear me? Can you hear the video? Let's do my own test here. Audio. Test. That looks good. All right. I'm just going to, unless somebody says something, we're going to let it ride.
They do make those changes with more alacrity and in better directions than if they don't believe that. If people tend to believe in a deterministic universe, they do act worse. So it may work. This is going to be sort of Straussian in its implications, but that may work for you. You're a very high IQ individual who can somehow reconcile the idea of living a very purposeful life with the idea that actually there's no purpose to anything. But for the vast majority of people, that is not actually how they live. And I would suggest that even in your daily life, you don't get out of bed in the morning thinking, man, my biology is driving me this morning to get on the bike, have a great day. The sun is shining.
I am so sorry. Can you hear me? No. Well, this is the most frustrating thing that's ever happened. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. My laptop's not working. My internet's not working. I now it's back. Let's try this. Let's do this. You know what? I have an idea. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to restart the router. We're going to watch from my laptop with the hotspot on. Okay. And then that's good. Okay. So we should be able to then bring that back. Boom. Hey, thank you so much, guys. Oh, guys, seriously, thank you so much. Morty, come here. Good boy. This one's for Morty. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Let's just stick with this. Are we on the right Wi-Fi? Make sure we're on the right Wi-Fi. We're on the phone Wi-Fi. Everything should be good. Jumping back in.
That's my biology doing this. And I don't think that most people who live purposeful lives, even if they believe that everything they're doing is predetermined by the world around them, by their own biology, I don't believe they actually feel that. They have to engage in what they themselves would term an illusion in order to feel a sense of purpose and meaning in their lives.
Of course, but that's what the evolutionary process, in my view, in my worldview, I should say, has done so well, is provide precisely that illusion. I mean, it's not as that. I mean, you say, look, you don't get out of bed in the morning thinking, gosh, you know, look at my biological.
My neurons are
drive.
firing. Yeah.
Of course not, because if I did, then the whole evolutionary purpose that this illusion serves would fall away. I mean, you say that this is a fairly purposeless life, and perhaps you know, the implication is that it's a bit of a depressing one. I didn't come here to inspire optimism in people. I just think it is.
All right, it's not going to be as smooth, but shout out to Wom Tech for the $2 super chat. Said composure deserves the bills. Oh yeah, we got to get Morty in the shot. Where is he? There you go. Thank you so much for the support, guys. You are amazing. You are amazing.
Is in fact
succeeding,
the case.
by the way.
It is in fact the case that free will doesn't exist, and we may feel very nihilistic towards that, but as a wise man once said, facts don't care about your feelings. And I will say that the argument against free will, in my view, is based upon something broader than just scientific analysis or empirical research. Rather, we can build an argument, I think, from a law of logic, the proposition that P must either be true or false, and it can't be both, it can't be neither. It has to be one or the other.
Right.
Now, this law of the excluded middle, one of the foundational precepts of philosophy.
So real quick, what he was just saying was that you know, when it comes to the existence of something, like that we're talking about P. So when we're talking about God, then we're talking about you know, P equals God. But if we're talking about anything, then the idea is that there's no middle ground. P either exists or it doesn't exist. Whether we're talking about God, whether we're talking about free will, whether we're talking about anything else, it either exists or it doesn't exist. There's no in between as to existence. Zippy said, calling positive change and good choices free will is silly. It's a whole lot of trying too hard to make it rocket science. I guess that's what philosophy is sometimes. You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong. Yeah, you like that one. He was like, a wise man once told me, facts don't care about your feelings. And indeed, they do not.
Philosophy, we can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity. And this will be regardless of whether it's material or immaterial. That's what makes this a crucial argument and an important one, a pertinent one, is that you can ask of that mental activity, is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random. And you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's either determined by something further inside your mind or inside your brain or indeed inside your soul, or it's determined by something external to your brain. If it's determined by something external to yourself, I should say yourself rather than your brain here to
and we'll go back over this.
Rid this conversation of any implicit materialism. Exterior to yourself, If that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action. If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate?
So
Indeterminate, it's random. Determined, you keep going back until you either terminate in something outside of the self, something, or I suppose something undetermined and therefore random, either of which you are completely out of control in. If you say that it terminates in something like a soul, people like to do this. They say, well, look, with a religious philosophy, we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything. Because you still need to, it's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery. But if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control. And
Right. So that to break all this down again, what we're talking about is the differences in the universe. There can be randomness. There can be things that cause this, that, or the other. But when we're talking about free will, we would have to go all the way back in the cause and effect of things to find that which you chose, that wasn't thrust upon you. And we don't have that. That doesn't exist. Everything that happens to you, everything that happens in general, is going to be a reflection of what happened before.
And that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control. Free will cannot exist.
Well,
and so I would be careful.
That argument does rely on the complete deconstruction of the self. I mean,
all right. So let's go back through that whole thing one more time and get, because I know it was a little bit heady.
Rid this conversation of any implicit materialism. Exterior to yourself, if that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action. If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate?
And so again, a lot of times I will talk to you guys about free will in the context of ice cream and picking an ice cream flavor. What's your favorite ice cream? Or just pick an ice cream flavor. And we'll go off that. And depending on what you say, we can follow that back and realize that if you say chocolate, okay, why did you say chocolate? Well, because chocolate's my favorite color. Okay, did you choose to like chocolate more than vanilla? Then it's not free will. And if we're that's exactly essentially what he's getting down to here.
So indeterminate, it's random. Determined, you keep going back until you either terminate in something outside of the self, something, or I suppose something undetermined and therefore random, either of which you are completely out of control in. If you say that it terminates in something like a soul, people like to do this. They say, well, look, with a religious philosophy, we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything. Because you still need to, it's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery. But if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control, and that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control, free will cannot exist.
Well, free will cannot exist. Gomtech says, does free will and no God have to be mutually exclusive? Wouldn't the entire argument be based off? I'm sorry, this is a different reading. I'm all messed up. Wouldn't the entire argument be based off that everything that has happened in the universe determines what you'll ever do? So yes to the second part. Does free will and no God have to be mutually exclusive? I suppose no, because so the answer is no. So we'd be talking about the difference between deism and theism. So like with deism, that's more of like the God of Spinoza, or like what Einstein was talking about when he was saying, when he used God. Hold on. And there we go. Okay. The type of God where you just kind of set things in motion, versus the type of God that is able to reach into the universe and answer prayers and this and that and the other. So no, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. But yes, the entire argument being based off everything that's happened in the universe determines what you'll do. Yep, that is it. Exactly. It told me that Moose Tracks ice cream is my favorite. You had no cognitive discussion, internal discussion to choose that. And things, if he said I like chocolate because it's more scarce than vanilla and not as strange as strawberry. So maybe some people don't care about the strangeness or the scarcity of a flavor of ice cream. maybe people just want to like what they like. And so those are two different things that neither of you chose that led you to a conclusion that you could argue that you had free will. If there's anything that's going to be free, it's that choice to pick an ice cream flavor that has nothing attached to it. There's no consequences or anything. And even there, you didn't choose it.
So
I would be
that
careful.
argument does rely on the complete deconstruction of the self. I mean, you're using the term self in this argument in, I think, a couple of different ways. You're saying something outside yourself, but then you're breaking down the self into a bunch of separate components as though the self is a computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you took the self and you broke it down into a machine, and there's like the microchip, and you got the processor, you got all these different parts of it. So it has to be coming from here, or it has to be coming from here. But I think the very idea that we have of ourselves as selves is as a deciding being. And so the attempt to carve that down into, so which parts of the deciding being, that is an avoidance strategy. So I don't think that the argument quite holds.
So if we can call the self just a deciding being,
call it a deciding being,
then that sort of fundamental assumption that we make about the nature of the self, I don't think is going to be incompatible with atheism.
How so?
Because we're talking about what the self is here. I mean,
All right, guys, I'm not moving anything, but I think I just plugged the router in. So we're going to give it one more try. If nothing, then we're going to do the rest of the show from the laptop. No more discussions. So why don't you mute the video real quick, just in case. All right, first. Okay, can you hear me? That's number one. What in the hell is, oh, that's why. Can you hear me? Is number one. And number two, can we see and hear the video? We should be back. Everything is still open. So I'll answer some of these right here until I get confirmation that you guys can hear me. Quick ice cream break. Yeah, good time to take some ice cream. I was just praying for a better stream. I mean, hey, I'm always open. I'm always open. God, if that was you, I thank you. I thank you. In the name of Guantech, I thank you. If that was you, like I say, I'm open to it. I'm open to it. But I'm just saying. All right. All right. We are in the building. All right. Let's see if we can get it. Yeah, let's see how this goes.
Really important for people in society to believe that they have the capacity to change themselves and to make different decisions than what biology would drive them to do. So you say, well, it's biology that drives you to get out of bed in the morning, which is almost Calvinist in sort of the way that it's described, right? It's like you're predestined to get out of bed in the morning, so thus you get out of bed in the morning. But the reality is that we are constantly making decisions as though those decisions make a difference in the universe. And what social science actually does tend to show is that when people believe that they have control over their own actions, and when they believe that they're capable of changing the way that they live, they do make those changes with more alacrity and in better directions than if they don't believe that. If people tend to believe in a deterministic universe.
Okay, but all that means is that we have to be better at getting people to understand that they can change, not giving them another or different false thing that, oh, if you believe in God, you can change. Well, if they can change just by the placebo of believing in God, then they can change without the God. You're creating more work for yourself. You're creating more work.
They do act worse. So it may work. This is going to be sort of Straussian in its implications, but that may work for you. You're a very high IQ individual who can somehow reconcile the idea of living a very purposeful life with the idea that actually there's no purpose to anything. But for the vast majority of people, that is not actually how they live. And I would suggest that even in your daily life, you don't get out of bed in the morning thinking, man, my biology is driving me this morning to get on the bike, have a great day, The sun is shining. That's my biology doing this. And I don't think that most people who live purposeful lives, even if they believe that everything they're doing is predetermined by the world around them, by their own biology, I don't believe they actually feel that. They have to engage in what they themselves would term an illusion in order to feel a sense of purpose and meaning in their lives.
Of course.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. The idea that we feel like we have free will is nothing new. This is, Dan Dennett has gone back and forth with Sam Harris for years about whether or not we have free will. And Dan Dennett, another philosopher, his bottom line is like, okay, if I feel like I don't have any, the free will that we talk about just in normal conversation, like, is somebody physically stopping you from doing this or that? As long as you feel that freedom, that's all that we mean when we say free will. And you can define it like that. You can change the words. I would call it semantic obfuscation, but that doesn't get us anywhere. And so the understanding that, okay, yes, we don't have free will, but we feel like we have free will is a thing. So what? You've done nothing.
I don't believe they actually feel that. They have to engage in what they themselves would term an illusion in order to feel a sense of purpose and meaning in their lives.
Of course, but that's what the evolutionary process, in my view, in my worldview, I should say, has done so well, is provide precisely that illusion. I mean, it's not as that. I mean, you say, look, you don't get out of bed in the morning thinking, gosh, look at my biological
My neurons are
drive.
firing, yeah.
Of course not, because if I did, then the whole evolutionary purpose that this illusion serves would fall away. I mean, you say that this is a fairly purposeless life, and perhaps the implication is that it's a bit of a depressing one.
Well, that's only if you don't give it purpose. Just because there's no inherent purpose doesn't mean it can't have a purpose. It just means it doesn't. That's all.
I didn't come here to inspire optimism in people. I just think it is in fact the
succeeded,
case.
by the way.
It is in fact the case that free will doesn't exist, and we may feel very nihilistic towards that, but as a wise man once said, facts don't care about your feelings. And I will say that the argument against free will, in my view, is based upon something broader than just scientific analysis or empirical research. Rather, we can build an argument, I think, from a law of logic, the proposition that P must either be true or false, and it can't be both, it can't be neither. It has to be one or the other. Now,
all right, so this is where we
law of
left
the
off.
excluded middle, one of the foundational precepts of philosophy. We can simply ask a question of any kind of mental activity, and this will be regardless of whether it's material or immaterial. That's what makes this a crucial argument and an important one, a pertinent one, is that you can ask of that mental activity, is it determined or is it not? That is it determined by anything else, or is it completely undetermined by anything? If it's undetermined by anything, then it's random, and you're by definition not in control of that which is random. If it's determined by something, then it's
It could be random.
It's either determined by something further inside your mind or inside your brain or indeed inside your soul, or it's determined by something external to your brain.
So it's something, it's randomness, it's something inside your brain, or it's something external.
If it's determined by something external to yourself, I should say yourself rather than your brain here to rid this conversation of any implicit materialism, exterior to yourself, if that's what's determining the action, then clearly you're not in ultimate control of that action.
Nope.
If it's something inside of yourself somewhere, then all you do is push the problem back and you ask the question again, is that thing determined or is it indeterminate?
So again, we ask the question of the ice cream. Is that determined or is that indeterminate? If it's determined, then you do not have free will.
So indeterminate, it's random, determined. You keep going back until you either terminate in something outside of the self, something, or I suppose something undetermined and therefore random, either of which you are completely out of control in. If you say that it terminates in something like a soul, people like to do this. They say, well, look, with a religious philosophy, we have the benefit of introducing a soul. That doesn't solve anything, because you still need to, it's not a matter of having to explain the mechanism by which the soul brings about actions. That may well be a mystery. But if it is the case that whatever it is that's doing that is either determined or it's not, and that if it's not, it's random and therefore out of your control, and that if it is, it ultimately terminates in something outside of yourself or something random, and both of which are out of your control, free will cannot exist.
Free will cannot exist. Well, something I can say that applies to both of them, in my opinion, would be only a Sith deals in absolutes. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. We still got to do our original trilogy movie night. I'm definitely down for that. To be said, if I ate chocolate all the time as a kid, I would like vanilla now. Exactly. Well,
And so I would be careful.
That argument does rely on the complete deconstruction of the self. Right? I mean, you're using the term self in this argument in, I think, a couple of different ways. You're saying something outside yourself, but then you're breaking down the self into a bunch of separate components as though the self is a computer. Right? As though if you took the self and you broke it down into a machine, and there's like the microchip, and you've got the processor, you got all these different parts of it. So it has to be coming from here, or it has to be coming from here. But I think the very idea that we have of ourselves as selves is as a deciding being. And so
well, but this is what he was saying about, well, some people will call this a soul. Then that still doesn't help you because you didn't choose your soul.
The attempt to carve that down into, so which parts of the deciding being, that is an avoidance strategy. So I don't think that the argument quite holds.
Well, if we can call the self just a deciding being,
call it a deciding being,
then that sort of fundamental assumption that we make about the nature of the self, I don't think is going to be incompatible with atheism.
How so?
Because we're talking about what the self is here. I mean, atheists believe in the self. Everybody believes in the self.
Well, no, that's not. I mean, that I find difficult to believe. Why would an atheist believe in the self? The self is
what? Okay, so technically, he's right. The self does not exist. Technically, he's right. If you try to look in, feel around. Sorry, hold on. Just trying to get these in order. So yes, the idea that your self exists separate from your body, like there's where in your body are you? Like if you point to your knee, you'd be like, okay, I clearly I'm not in there. So okay, it's probably a little bit more up here. What about here? Like I'm definitely not here. Usually you're somewhere behind the eyes. And that the difference between that feeling and the feeling of when you point at your knee, he's technically right. There's no difference there.
How so?
Because we're talking about what the self is here. I mean, atheists believe in the self. Everybody believes in the self.
Well, no, that's not. I mean, that I find difficult to believe. Why would an atheist believe in the self? The self is a series of non-deciding mechanisms, as you've described. I see that your view of the self is an atheist view of the self, a meatball wandering through space, as I've put it somewhat colorfully, the sort of Spinoza idea that you're a stone that's been thrown, and you can comprehend that you've been thrown, but you're a stone that's been thrown, and that's just the way that it is.
Ooh, that's a good way to say it. You're a stone that has been thrown, and you're aware that you're a stone, but that's just the way it is. I love that.
Why would there be in atheist philosophy such a thing as a deciding self? The deciding self, the deciding being, is external to the idea of an evolutionary, suggests uncaused.
And we're back. Never have I had experience quite like this. Successfully connected. We are 1830.
Just excluded it through your own philosophy.
Uncaused decision making, I suppose, is a concept that I think is unintelligible, and therefore, if there is an unintelligibility of the self on atheism, I suppose the thrust of the criticism that I made to essentially every point you made in that video, except for the argument from motion, is that what you're saying to me, if it applies to atheism, I think simultaneously applies to theism as well.
How so?
An uncaused decision. I mean, what is the process by which a decision is made?
But now you're falling into the same sort of argument that I excluded at the beginning, which was, I said that the beauty of religion is that there's a bunch of stuff I don't understand. So I can't explain to you how the uncaused self makes decisions.
Well, then I can't explain to you how the uncaused self exists on an atheistic
But you have a
framework.
burden and I don't. Meaning that
I don't think that's the case.
You do, though. I mean, the simple fact is that you.
So wait a minute. The what?
Simultaneously applies to theism as an unintelligibility of the self on atheism. I suppose
There's an unintelligibility of the self.
the thrust of the criticism that I made to essentially every point you made in that video, except for the argument from motion, is that what you're saying to me, if it applies to atheism, I think simultaneously applies to theism as well.
How so?
An uncaused decision. I mean, what is the process by which a decision is made?
But now you're following.
Okay, so I'm not following it, so I'm just going to let them go and go at it.
Into the same sort of argument that I excluded at the beginning, which was I said that the beauty of religion is that there's a bunch of stuff I don't understand. So I can't explain to you how the uncaused self makes decisions.
Well, then I can't explain to you how the uncaused self exists on an atheist.
But you have a
framework.
burden and I don't. Meaning that
I don't think that's the case.
You do, though. I mean, the simple fact is that you are the one who's claiming that a reasonable materialist universe is the cause of all. And so if that's the case, you do have to explain the mechanism in a way that I certainly do not. My entire philosophy rests on the positing of an entire realm of things I don't understand in terms of their interaction with the world. Now, as I said at the very beginning, that leaves me a giant escape hatch. I'm not going to pretend that that's not a giant escape hatch. It acts in practice as a giant escape hatch. It also tends to act as a fundamental principle of faith, right? Again,
and the problem with that is, it's definitely getting deep. The problem with that is that, as he said, it kind of leaves him an out, but it doesn't seem, it just seems very convenient that everything you don't know, it's like, oh, well, God works in mysterious ways kind of thing. I don't like that. And he's kind of, in this like, oh, well, I get to just say, I don't know, because the burden of proof is on you. It's like, okay, sure. But you're only insofar as this particular conversation, if we're actually talking about the real practicality of this, then it doesn't really matter if you're saying faith or any other reason. It has to be based on reality.
Every moral realm, right? When you get to the problem of good and evil, right? One of the big questions is, well, how can God allow evil to take place in the world? And the fundamental religious answer, as it has been for thousands of years, is my mind is not God's, which is a giant escape hatch. It also happens to be true from a religious point of view.
So if I may, that there are two sort of escape hatches here. There are two appeals to mystery going on here. And it seems to me that what you're saying is something along the lines of my simple appeal to mystery here is disallowed in the way that you're allowed to appeal to this mystery because I'm the one making the claim. I think that not
because I'm the one making.
Not because he's making the claim, but because he's relying on faith and he's saying, well, I have faith, so I don't need to know. You're saying that you don't have faith, and so you need to know. But it's like, no, you need to know if you're saying that you know. You're trying to have your cake and eat it too. Either it's faith and it's something that you don't know, or it's something that you know. I want to post Ben's argument here is same as ancient Druids and every other heretical religion. Anything that can't be explained is God's will. Bingo! Also known as the God of the gaps argument.
The claim, but because
I'm the one with the burden.
In
the context of this discussion,
sorry, I'm missing the who's the you and the who's the I in
yes.
a sense, but yes.
I see what you mean. I'm speaking for myself there.
Sorry.
If in the context of this discussion, this began the subject which I think is the first one you bring up in this video, free will. Here's this thing that I think exists, and on the basis of its existence, think entails the existence of a God, or at least points to the existence of a God. I shouldn't say entail. And then when I say that I don't think that the concept of free will is intelligible, and you say, well, how is it intelligible on atheism? And I say, I'm not sure it is, but it's not on theism either. And you say, well, there's my escape hatch. I can appeal to mystery. I don't think the burden is on me there. I think you were the one who's making the claim that free will does exist.
Right, exactly. He's saying, well, I have this escape hatch that, like Montefiore said, is God of the gaps. Well, I can't explain it, but that's just how God works. That you don't have that escape hatch. I mean, you can say those things, but that's not a good faith way to engage with the actual reasonable practical aspects of this. And now if you want to stop there and say, I don't know, but I believe, then that is the end of the conversation. Sure. Because it's like, all right, you believe what you believe then. I mean, I don't know, what do you want me to say? But if you want to try to have a win here, if you want to try to have your logic make sense, and this ain't it.
There is this mysterious property of the universe
actually, that's not
escapes
true.
this determined or indetermined dichotomy, And then when I say that this is unintelligible to me, and based on what I see to be fundamentally appeal to a law of logic, suddenly I'm the one making the claim. I'm the one with the burden who has to do the proving.
No,
I don't see
the
it
actual
that way.
claim that I originally made, if you recall, was a conditional claim.
Mm-hmm.
I did not claim free will exists, therefore God. I claimed if you believe free will exists, it cannot exist in a materialist universe. Now, you say, okay, fine, it doesn't exist in a materialist universe. I don't believe in free will.
Exactly. Sure.
Yes.
That's fine. That's totally plausible. As I said right at the top here,
Mhm.
I'm not going to prove to you that God exists today. What I am going to say is that the vast majority of people throughout nearly all of human history have believed there is a thing called a self. It is a
Yes.
deciding self that makes these decisions. If you are a person who believes that, you're right. It can't exist in your world. So I'm not saying that it does exist. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're totally right. And all of this is just a series of chemical firings. That's quite plausible. That's fine. What I have said, and this is the argument that hasn't yet been rebutted, is the
Okay. The argument
that society
the argument that hasn't been rebutted yet. That society
does require an extraordinary number of people to believe that they are capable of making decisions for the good or for the bad. Because again, not everybody is you. Not everybody is capable of waking up in the morning, putting one half of their brain on hold, the side that says what I'm doing today doesn't matter, and we are all going to wind up in the cosmic nothingness of space anyway, and the sun's going to.
That's true. I mean, I will give Ben credit there that and I'm learning a little bit more as we go through this, that the idea that anybody can just understand the values that we have as Americans and I take that point. I take the point, especially knowing that most atheists out there are not like me. It doesn't mean the problem with it is that we're talking about a false dichotomy where either you have religion or you have a stark atheism, rejection of that religion, when that's not at all what is being proposed. At least not what I'm proposing. I have the answer for what works for exactly what they're talking about. You need to be able to know that you can change based on the values that we all agree upon. And we don't need a belief in a God. So he said, so why not just free will the soul and move on? I have no idea what that means.
Going to explode and eat the earth. Most people don't function that way. And so a functional society, a society that actually works, relies on people actually believing that their fate is in their hands. And the way that people tend to understand that on a day-to-day level is, I get up in the morning and I make a decision whether I'm taking my kids to school today. I get up in the morning and I decide whether I'm giving charity today. I get up in the morning and I decide whether to go to a job today. Because the truth is that for a huge number of people, and I would say this is true for not virtually all, many, I'd say the majority of people.
Okay.
If they were informed since the time they were small that their decision-making process does not exist, there is no decision to be made. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So
if people knew whatever's going to happen is going to happen,
those decisions have no moral weight in the universe because the universe has no moral weight.
Right.
There is no way to create a functional society on the basis of these premises.
Okay. That's your claim. How do you know that? How do you know that? How can you say humans can never do X? That's a claim. Why? I mean, these claims are just nothing. How can you exactly? People can't make laws without real. I mean, I'm not a history buff, but I'm pretty sure humans did all right with maybe not laws, but societal norms before religion. I'm pretty sure there's tribes all over the world that have never had contact with the Bible, but they still have, their own morality. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that it's better than an American Christian-based morality, but you're wrong. So we said, I'm trying to boil all this down in my head. It feels like Ben is arguing from a divine/divinity standpoint of free will equals soul equals God. Yep, that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what he's saying. He's taking this idea that we do indeed have free will. He's saying, yes, we do indeed have free will. And because of that, we can say that God exists, and because God exists, now that we should follow this particular religion, so on. And he's making all these axiomatic things, and one ties to the next, ties to the next, ties to the next, without anything actually proving and actually connecting those things. Like if divinity was the standpoint of free will and it did equal a soul and that did equal God, then yes, then we would all be religious. But that is begging the question. That is precisely what we are here to discuss. That's also true of me. Fair enough. Shout out to Cody Brooks in the building. Welcome to the party. Said perhaps only the gods are perhaps the only gods are the thoughts within. How are you your own God with your own universe in your head? Morality comes from the burden of feeling all the weight of the world. Very possible. And again, nothing that Cody is saying goes against what Ben has been saying. But because it's anchored. It's anchored in, oh, there is a God. There must be a God. There has to be a God. That's the whole anchoring. That's everything. And without that, then none of the rest of this makes sense. And so I don't understand why you don't focus on hey, we need to make sure that people feel like they can change themselves in society. That's the important part.
There may be a Platonic world where philosophers can think about this in the gardens of their imagination and feel great about it. But that's not actually how society functions, not for children, not for teenagers, not for
I
adults.
would argue the complete and exact opposite. There may be people who believe in the Bible and read the Bible and go by that, or Jewish people who go by the Torah and the whatever. Most people do not act that way. Most people cannot handle doing that. They don't know how to they don't know how to do anything. It's just, this is God, this is God, this is God. That's what God said. There's no critical thinking there at all.
Yes. And we're going to go on and talk about that in the second section. I had free will to ask any of the questions I've had written down here, but I just didn't want to. I didn't want to stop either of you. It's been breathless and captivating. I'm sure you'll agree. Before we go to our first break, we are going to go on and talk about society and how morality undergirds society and civilization.
May I just say, but just I know we're coming to the end of the section. Just to close off this moment, that if people listening agree with me that free will in fact doesn't exist, and simultaneously agree with you that free will is somehow necessary for the upkeep of civilization, then I would simply ask them to consider who's relying on the delusion here.
Ooh.
And I don't mean that as an insult, but you see what I'm saying, right?
I totally agree. And so from my argument, you would be, and from your argument, I would be. Yeah. Meaning, I think that you are delusional. There's no free will, and you think I'm delusional in the sense that there is no free will, and yet I believe in it.
Right, and that's the damage and the harm of. I keep looking in the wrong camera. That's the damage of dogma, is that you get as an impasse. Oh, you believe that? Well, no, this thing is true that I don't know, that I can't prove that. No, well, that doesn't seem to be true. I think this thing is true, except for the fact that the atheist here, at least in this conversation, can back up everything. Can back up everything that he's saying. All of it, all of it tracks. Whereas with Ben, it doesn't.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for you, Alex, just before we go to the break then, because we're trying to break it down, we've got two insane minds here, really kind of grappling. And I feel as I've won a prize in a competition just to be here sitting with you both.
So, I got my mouse upstairs too, so we're doing this with the touchpad. Guantek says, I'd say religion is less about God, and now if an attempt to help run more complex society. It's less about God, and now it's more an attempt to help complex societies. Morality may not be wholly from religion, but religion is a collection of many morals to help us get along. And dogma. That's the issue. That's the issue. If it was just this, religion all the way. But it's not just this. It's this, plus you must believe this, that, and that. And if you don't, you burn in hell forever. That's the problem. That's the problem. Cody says, exactly, we fill in the gaps in a sense. The history of our main religions is very interesting to me. I've been looking into 5th century stuff lately. The evolution is fun. Word up. Definitely got to check out some of that.
To break it down for the viewers, Alex, would you say that free will is maybe, if there is no such thing as free will, is it nevertheless a helpful fiction for people, a convenient narrative that we can...
A helpful fiction. So let's do a poll on that. Hopefully this will let me... Oh, I don't want the goddamn thing. Test, test. All right. So I honestly think the dogma came later, kind of like how Wogan started. It was a good idea, but only it's good, but was co-opted by fallible humans. I don't necessarily disagree. But I think going back to this thing is frustrating. I don't even remember where this is coming from. The dogma came later. It isn't though. How can you explain this further, Quamtech? Because how are we talking about later in terms of religion, or are we talking later in terms of faith in something like an organized religion? Because the dogma was always part of an organized religion. If we're talking about, just like human evolving, and before there was the religion itself, there were beliefs. Then that makes sense. But yeah, I don't know about that. I think religion, specifically organized religion, is specifically based around dogma. Yep. Ah. This has been the most struggling stream we ever did struggle. Nope. Chrome tab. Right. And Glomtech says, religion was brought about to help run society. The dogma came as a result of powerful people wanting more powerful, so therefore use the power structures available to gain control. I don't know, because what was the original religion that was brought to help run society? That was not the Bible. That was not God is infallible. I mean, I agree with that, but again, it was based on the dogma. Here, you know what? Let's do this. Since, and you can feel free, but if you want to, but I'm going to drop the link here since we're struggling hard anyway. I'd love to know what you mean by this, Quamtech, if you want to come up and talk about this, because I don't think this makes sense. I don't think this makes sense, because you're saying that the religion that helped to help guide people, it would need the dogma in order to do that. Hey, shout out to Zippy the Strange coming in hot with another $5. Morty, come here. Come here. No, we got to give him a show. Come on. Yeah. There we go. Morty. Yummy. Some money for the comms. Thank you, guys. It is definitely a rough night for me. Zippy said, the more spiritualism centralized, the more dogma was used as a control method. Well, but that's the same thing. The issue is that they were using it as a control method. The fact that it's not what it really what it really that it connects to reality. It's just what they were doing. Let's say hello to our boy Guam Tech. Welcome to the party.
What's up? What's
Saving the
up?
show. What is good, brother? Good to see ya. So what is it? What exactly are you trying to say here? That that religion was there, and then the dogma came later?
So, okay, I am by far not an expert on any of this stuff, but basically just through some of the stuff that I've heard, a lot of it obviously coming from JBP and whatnot, I think it was a lot more so that religion came about because pretty much the people that came up with religion had a lot of people to run. So like Moses, basically, right? He was leading a lot of people into the desert. Everybody was having all these problems and stuff. So he ended up having to come up with rules for everybody to be able to follow. And he pretty much was so tired of having to go through every single person's individual problems to the point where he basically said, okay, here are the rules. This is what we're going to do. We're all going to follow these rules, and we're going to make sure that everybody has to do it. So that's kind of where I'm getting at.
Right, but right there, that is dogma. That's saying everybody has to do this because everybody has to do this. Not everybody has to do this because this is going to create a better society, but everybody has to do this because everybody has to do this.
Well, I think that would be basically why he would be saying that. It didn't just come out of nowhere. It was everybody has to do this because this is how we're all going to be able to get along and survive. I don't have the time in my day, and I don't have enough people around me who have this kind of knowledge to be able to keep on going through every single person's individual problems. So therefore, I am going to write all of this out, and we're all, like it or not, gonna have to go by all of this. And if things come up, then yes, we can deal with it individually. But this is the template for how we're all going to be able to get along and actually survive through all of this. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as like religion it seemed more like a justice system rather than these things came from on high, and just because it said this from a burning bush that I probably got high just by smelling it, I just came up with this shit. Like there was a reason for why we ended up having to have these rules set forth. And then as time went along, it was the people that looked into that and they were like, hey, this is a really good way of controlling people. People they're following this. So what if we add more to it? Or what if we say that, yes, there was the myth of how he got these templates, and we get people to believe into the myth of how it ended up happening. So I don't know. Maybe you can tell me where I might be going wrong with that.
I don't think you're going wrong at all. I just think that we're kind of saying the same thing, that this notion of using this story to control people is the original problem. And so maybe we can say that let's use Moses. Maybe for Moses, he didn't have the scientific knowledge. He didn't have the sociological knowledge. He didn't have the whatever knowledge he needed to be able to control that, keep control over that many people. And so religion worked for that. Sure. That doesn't mean that it's not dogma. That doesn't mean that it's based on reason. That doesn't mean that it's good for people today. So I don't think I disagree with you. But I don't think that has anything to do with why we should be or should not be getting closer to what we believe is the actual reality of what we're talking about.
Right. Okay. So and as far as that goes, that is a problem that I have with today.
Mm-hmm.
Basically just the idea that so many people use religion as their go-to for basically this is the answer for everything, right? This God is, like you said, the God of the gaps and all that stuff. Like that's where you find so many flaws in it. But I would say that going back to the basic understanding of why religion was made is probably the more useful way of being able to use religion now, because it does still go back to a template for how to run your life, rather than this is God, this is proof of God, And you have to believe in that God for sure to make sure that you're going to have an afterlife.
Yeah,
That's
I
where it
agree with
starts
that part.
going a little too far. And that's where I do think that people have a really good argument against that part of religion.
Mhm.
But I would also say that the value of religion doesn't rely in proving whether or not there is a God.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree, but I would take it a step further and say that by accepting, even though religion has, positive aspects to it, that whether we believe in the divine aspects or not, we want to keep those things, whether or not those things are there. Just because, like, okay, maybe let's come from a different angle. I have not read Mein Kampf, but I'm sure we could pull some random things from there that somewhere would be applicable to life somewhere. Again, I don't know. I haven't read it. Just because that's the case doesn't mean we should wholesale. Oh yeah, Hitler was great. And so just because religion is at the time was a good way to do this thing, especially now that we have the tools and understanding to do it, not only just as good, but arguably better without these dogmatic beliefs, then why are we hanging on to them?
So
That's what I'm getting hung up on.
definitely a good point there. But I also saw that one of the commenters was bringing up Joseph Campbell. You know, the idea that there have been these morals that have stayed with us through civilizations, through society, and through humans for a long time. And it seems like these things seem to repeat over and over and over again. So, yeah, I can see that, like, if one person came up with those morals, then that would be the problem. But they seem to reiterate over and over and over throughout all of our history. So is it really that we're going off of just one person's idea of what is good? Or do we all keep coming to the same understanding of what has been good, even though we have no connection to all of these?
Yeah, I do. I do think that is. I think both are happening. I think that there are some fundamental things about life, about humans, about consciousness, about stuff that before we had science, that humans just understood. And even to today, with all the science that we have, we still haven't explained it, and people can still sense that it's there. That is not a reason to say, I know this is the truth. And so we can have all remember, the Ben Shapiro's thing was about people understanding that they can change. If that's the fundamental thing that we need, then let's focus on that. And let's get rid of the floof, the woo-woo stuff. Because then we can all come together. And then if you want to believe in God on the side, that's great. But now we're all on the same team. Why is that not the way to go?
And unfortunately, that's where my understanding for it kind of comes to its limits. I really just wanted to come on to be able to kind of explain a little bit more of what I meant as far as like religion being a justice system first, and then moving its way towards dogma. Before I go though, so maybe I have the wrong idea of dogma. Can you give me a little bit more of a concise explanation of what you mean by it?
Okay, so before we'll get a Google dictionary definition, but when I say dogma, I am referring to a claim, a truth claim, or a group of truth claims that cannot be questioned. So the existence of God, when I say it cannot be questioned, obviously you can question it, but the response is shut down. Well, how do you know God exists? Well, I just know. Or if you believe that a man can transform into a female, how do you know that a man can? Well, that's just what it is. We've decided that. Well, okay. Well, what is the mechanism that that happens? You're sexist. You're racist. And so there's two different ways of shutting down the conversation. But it is the shutting down of the conversation that makes dogma to me. So let's get let's see what Google has to say here. Dogma. So the official definition: a principle or set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true.
Bingo.
So pretty much exactly what I said. Yeah, and so yeah, as if it was like religion, it's a good club to join until it's not. Comparative religion is a good way to see problems with dogma. Yep. Montefiore said, God speaks through me, therefore God exists. No questions. Yep. Religious groups on dogma are like high schoolers on mega power trip. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming up to clarify that. It's a very interesting point, and I'm glad to understand it a little bit better.
Appreciate you, man. Yeah.
Anything to call out for the people?
Nope. You're all beautiful buttheads.
All right, love it, brother. I will see you around. Thank you.
Later, man.
All right, let's get back into it. But yeah, I mean, definitely a good point about when and where and how did it become something good and go to something not so good? I think that's a good question that kind of speaks to what we're hinging on. And obviously, we weren't there. Obviously, we didn't know. Hey, look who we got in the building! Seabass said, greetings from far-flung, distant planet California. Wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I come in peace. Now bring me figgy pudding. Dilly dilly to Seabass and figgy pudding. Welcome to the party. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well. Cody said, I grew up in Pentecostal holiness, and I was only allowed to read books that my dad approved. My dad had a big problem with me reading history, anything that threatened his way of life. Dogma extreme. That is dogma. Yep, exactly. All right, let's back this up a little bit and see where. Oh my God, I'm trying to use the mouse and everything. Jesus.
I understand that, but because it evolves so strongly, I will say that we are all, if we are sort of delusory in our belief in free will. I mean, you're quite right in saying that I act as if free will exists in the sense of not constantly being aware that it doesn't. I don't wake up and do those strange morning affirmations that you mentioned into the mirror about, the sort of heat death of the universe.
But maybe you should.
People, I think it is good to reflect on your mortality in that manner every once in a while, and it does inspire some serious thought about whether you're really taking your philosophy seriously. But I will say that the mechanism is so useful and has been so successful in embedding itself into our psyche that we cannot shake it off. So I can I can have conversations with people, as I do regularly, talking about the existence of free will, and they come away saying, you know what, that's extraordinary. Maybe you're right about this. And nothing about the way they live their life changes, precisely because of the fact that the very argument I'm making relies on the assumption that we will still be driven by our drives.
Exactly. So exactly what I'm talking about, in a slightly different context, but the idea that we can't move any further if you are determining that this is the end point. If this is the end point of us learning about what God is, it's all in the Bible, then there's nothing else to learn. And we can't get any closer to it. And we can't understand it any better. Well, it talked to me and I don't know. Okay, if you say so. If that's as best as it's going to get, then
all I'm doing is identifying what's actually going on there, in my view. It doesn't actually change what happens or what the brain indeed does.
So the utility argument for what you're saying about free will is that the main utility in you saying these things is for people not to believe you in the end.
We are predetermined to go to a break at this point. So we're going to continue this. You're watching and listening to Society. There's enjoying the conversation from today's conversation to the big conversation from Premiere Unbelievable with me, your host, Andy Kine. Today, our topic is religion. Is it good or bad for society? And I've been joined by Ben Shapiro.
I should have made a poll, but obviously I know what you guys would say, but that was an obvious poll.
And Alex O'Connor. And in the first section, we basically solved the problem of free will. That's done. No one need write on that ever again. So congratulations.
Done.
That's another credit for you.
Yeah, I think on the delusion point, we terminated in something like, and I know you are, but what am I?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And my dad can beat up your dad's. So let's move on in this section to talking about another easily solved question, morality and its role in society. So,
and its role
Alex,
in
we started
society.
with Ben in the first section. Let's start with you. What for you makes an outcome good or bad? And feel free to break that down, define things as you want.
So I think if I can guess where this is going, the idea of morality without a God, as we've talked about before, is just the difference between the most extreme suffering for the most amount of people. I should do that this way. The most extreme suffering for the most amount of people and the most well-being for the most amount of people. That's a spectrum. You can be anywhere on that spectrum. Getting closer to the worst possible suffering for all human beings is wrong, and moving closer to the best, the most well-being for all humans is good. If we're not, if that's not what we're talking about, when we're talking about morality, then you're having a different conversation than I am, and whether you're talking about God or not.
And how do we determine what is good and acceptable in society?
Here is where I may disappoint you and potentially excite Mr. Shapiro in that I don't have a good answer to that question. In that, obviously, attempts have been made for a long time to ground good outside of God. I must say that similarly to rehash the same theme, I think there are issues with grounding good in God as well. I don't think that removes the problem. I don't quite know what good is, if it indeed exists. I'm quite suspicious of the concept. I think it might be another one of these unfortunately quite nihilistic evolutionary sort of illusions of a sort. I guess I ascribe to emotivism more than anything, which has sort of gone out of fashion in the past decade, but I think still has some
emotivism. Let's see if we can get a dictionary definition of what do you say? Emotivism? An ethical theory that regards ethical and value judgments as expressions of feeling or attitude and prescriptions of action rather than assertions of or reports of anything.
What?
I don't know what that means, but
some truth to it in a sense. It's more of a philosophy of language than it is a philosophy of what good and bad actually is. What I do know, however, is that there are problems, I think, with trying to ground morality in the existence of a God, especially if it's done so on the grounds that it essentially can't be done anywhere else. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the religions of the world are false. I think that they are incorrect. That is, I don't think there really is a supernatural authority. And what that means is that the inventions of religious morality are just those inventions, and inventions of a human mind. Now, if you have a human morality that recognizes that it is essentially a series of compromises between the history of mankind trying to get along with each other on a planet, then what happens is sometimes these ideas and these philosophies rub up against the real world, and we can adapt them as necessary. Now, there is a deep problem with this, and that is, if I meet a man who wants to kill me, or a friend, and he says that he doesn't believe in God, there's very little I can do to talk him out of that, except I can threaten him with legal sanction, I can threaten him with moral reproach, exclusion from the moral community, but there's not much more I can do.
Okay, so that's the situation. If someone comes up and is like, hey, I want to hurt you or your friend, there's only so much you can do. All right, I'm with you so far.
However, if a person says that he wants to kill me, and he believes that he wants to kill me because God has told him to do so, then I don't even have that minimal reproach available to me. Because there is no law written by any man of any time that could ever count one iota against the dictates of the creator of the universe.
I feel like that might be a little dramatic. Hold on.
And that is, if I meet a man who wants to kill me, or a friend.
If I meet a man who wants to kill me or a friend.
And he says that he doesn't believe in God, there's very little I can do to talk him out of that, except I can threaten him with legal sanction, I can threaten him with moral reproach, exclusion from the moral community, but there's not much.
So he's saying, you know, with the atheist who says, I'm going to hurt you, then there's all these rational things that a rational person would not want to experience. They don't want to, get the police called on, they don't want to go to court, all these types of things. But a man who genuinely believes dogmatically that God said you have to kill that man, there's nothing. You donezo. Unless you strap, you donezo.
Much more I can do. However, if a person says that he wants to kill me, and he believes that he wants to kill me because God has told him to do so, then I don't even have that minimal reproach available to me.
Yeah,
because there is no law written by any man of any time that could ever count one iota against the dictates of the creator of the universe. Therefore, if that God in fact does not exist, and if these moralities are in fact human inventions, then what you have in the grounding of an ethical system in the dictates, allegedly, of the creator of the universe is all of the arbitrariness and subjectivity and failure and faults of nihilism and human invented morality, with all of the certainty and all of the faith and all of the unanswerability of the creator of the universe. That to me seems a dangerous cocktail that we drink at our peril.
Yeah, so this is by and large the entire thing of why I'm against religion. That nails it down. If you have a man who wants to hurt you and doesn't believe in a God, and then you have a man who wants to hurt you because he believes it, like those are so very different circumstances. It's hard to articulate. Like I mean, it's there. So like that is a great point. I really don't know how to add on to that. Zibby said, good and evil is a perceptive issue. Morality should be more about balancing fairness between people to mitigate irrationality. Fair enough. Not mad at that.
So many things there, and so much that you're saying is quite brilliant. I actually thought you were going in a different direction with that last example, which I'll explain in a second. So yeah, to start with the very beginning, obviously the idea of right and wrong. So there are many problems with the motivism. Alistair McIntyre does a good job sort of breaking down the problems with the motivism. But the sort of idea that there have to be certain moral absolutes that are beyond contention, and those moral absolutes have to be universally accepted. You can ground that, I suppose, in a sort of descriptive universe. The problem is that, to go back to your example, which again, I think is a really interesting one, if a man comes to kill me, I think the real question of religion versus non-religion in the utility sphere here is it more likely that a man is going to come to kill you being a devotee of a religion that says that he must kill you? Or is it more likely that a man is going to kill you out of self-interest because he is not a devotee of a God who says that killing is wrong? So if you are faced with these two alternatives, to kind of remove your example one step, the question is why the man has come to kill you. I mean, your premise is the man has come to kill you because God told him to, and so he can't be dissuaded by force. Agreed. We see that full scale in the real world on a fairly regular basis. It is also true that over the course of human history, men have...
Sorry, my thing was gonna die, and of course it got unplugged because that thing is too far away, and the whole time it wasn't even charging. Perspective, Jesus has left the building. Perceptive, so it's more perceptive issue. Yeah. Again, I don't know that that's true. I think it really comes down to that is the spectrum. We have the spectrum here. This is the most good. This is the most bad. If you're moving this way towards bad, that's bad. If you're moving this way towards good, that's good. I don't feel like we need to make it any more complicated than that.
Have come to kill one another on the basis of self-interest in extraordinary amounts of the time. Tribal self-interest, particularly, having no particular relationship with God, just the idea that I want to kill you over territory, I want to kill you over resources, I want to kill you because you're not a member of my immediate kin family, or because you killed a member of my kin family, and so in revenge, I need to kill a member of your kin family. The entire, to borrow from your language, the entire sort of evolution of religion on a utility basis would have been to create moral absolutes that are applicable more broadly than to you and your friends. Any morality that can be created on an individual level is inherently dangerous because you can immediately graft that morality onto your personal self-interest. The entire purpose of religion, whether you want to ground that in evolutionary brain functionings, or whether you want to ground that in revelation, the entire purpose of religion on a utility level is to remove morality from the purview of my special interest and to say, here are things that I cannot do, even if they are in my interest, because there is a higher power that says I cannot do these things.
I'm not sure what the issue is. This is a high level conversation, but taking the age, that's what I think it is. That's what I think it is. Taking away the agency from yourself and saying, I can do this, I can't do that. What if the thing that you can do according to God is on that spectrum going towards bad? How do you know that? And we see that happens when people do bad things in the name of God. So that absolutely can happen. So why is that something that we want to yeah, right? Why is that something we want to perpetuate? We would want to get rid of, we would want people to have that accountability, and that we all agree externally what the rules are for our society. Again, none of this needs a God. Let's go back. But
want to ground that in revelation. The entire purpose of religion on a utility level is to remove morality from the purview of my special interest and to say, here are things that I cannot do, even if they are in my interest, because there is a higher power that says I cannot do these things.
I kind of like, just saying, here are things that I cannot do. I cannot allow the Holy Land to be overrun with Jews, says Hamas. Why? Why do we need this? Why is Ben Shapiro of the opinion that we are so unevolved that we need a magical ghost story in order to know the things that we know? We know them. Context said, hence why I wanted to get my dumbass off the stream and get back to the professionals. Well, I mean, I think we had an interesting conversation, but yeah, this is a good one.
I think that a society that does not have these moral absolutes is in deep trouble. A society that refuses to say that there are certain absolutes that cannot be crossed under any circumstances that are universally applicable, it reduces things that we all take for granted, like equal justice before the law, like the idea that the law is supposed to equally apply to everybody, whether they're a member of your family or whether they're not. And there are broad cultural differences in these questions. I mean, to pretend that all human societies have equality under law is obviously not true. It's not even remotely true, actually. There's a very good book called The Weirdest People in the World, all about the idea that we in the West have this sort of ethnocentric view of ourselves where we think everybody thinks like people in the West. But the truth is that because we are Western educated, industrialized, rich and democratic, we have particular views of the world. Those views are drawn from a particularistic tradition. That particularistic tradition is biblical in nature. I mean, it is Judeo-Christian in nature, even if you're just describing European society or American society, historically speaking. So the kind of removal of God from the equation, your suggestion is that God makes a person impervious to countervailing responses. And my answer is yes, God does make a person impervious to countervailing responses, including the evils of one's own heart, if you truly believe that God is standing above you, telling you not to do that thing. And again, social science tends to bear this out. People who believe that
wait, social science tends to bear out what? That if you believe in God, you're not going to do... he's throwing a lot out there. I'm just, shout out to Quantum Tech. I'm just going to let the professionals handle it.
God is above them, tend to give more charity, for example. People who tend to live inside religious communities, within the religious community. And I'm not going to pretend that I think all religions are equivalent in their truth propositions, because I don't. I mean, if I did, I wouldn't be wearing a yarmulke, right?
I do. They're all wrong.
So that's just what it is. Inside religious communities, a lot of social bonds and a lot of social frameworks are built on the basis of this shared belief system. In other words, diversity itself, self-interest, cannot always check self-interest, and it tends to tear apart societies and communities unless there is an orienting goal. That orienting goal traditionally has been performed by church. It's been traditionally performed by the idea that you are serving God together. And because of that, people build these social bonds, including the institutions of police, for example, to prevent people from killing each other. Because
I cannot wait to see what Alex has to say, because he's not really making an argument. He's just saying things. He's just saying, like, well, this is good, and the church used to be a part of this, and this is good, and the church used to be part of this. Cope.
We now all agree that killing is wrong, and so we ought to have a third party that we can actually give the power to stop that killing. So again, I think that as much as I hate to say, we should give that power to the government. Unfortunately, that is one of the very few things that I do believe the government should be for. We should have a better government that's not based in this religion.
But we don't need a god. We don't need a fantastical creature.
The question of utility here is one of whether you think that the chief danger is that people are going to believe in a God who tells them to kill in God's name, or whether you think that the chief danger is in man's own heart, and that man is going to be driven by his own self-interest to commit murder and then call it something else.
That's irrelevant, because both of those things happen with religious people and non-religious people alike. So whatever you're trying to say is just not applicable, because it applies to religious people and non-religious people. If it only applied to religious people, then spot on. In which case, I'd be like, we all need to be religious. But that's not the case. Zippy said, I think he's mixing community coming together based around religion and the community coming together for self-improvement. Exactly. And yes, they are coming together for self-improvement because of the religion, but that doesn't mean that the religion is the only way to bring people together. And when you have a religion, then you are inherently excluding people from coming together in that community. I mean, it's the basis of this whole thing. It's because the Abrahamics keep ignoring God. Come on, man. Ben, stop the cope. Stop the cope.
I think it's all very well and good when
All right, let's see it.
this religious tradition is protecting what you think is good. But as we know, it can do the exact opposite, and it can do so with the same force. And I suppose the question we have to ask is whether this is a worthwhile trade-off.
There you go. There you go. Religion has all these great things. Yes. Oh, that's your argument. Religion has good things. Well, guess what, Ben? Religion can have bad things too. Great question. Is this a worthwhile trade-off? And obviously, I say no.
You know, that there may be some social utility in putting our fundamental ethical assumptions outside of the realm of debate. But when those ethical statements begin to inspire what we would probably consider to be less than socially cohesive behavior, there is nothing you can do. Nothing to talk people out of them, precisely because that's where they've placed them. And that seems dangerous to me. And it seems for example, you know, a lot of people talk about how religion can make people happier. It can make people more socially cohesive.
Which it absolutely can.
Promote people to start families and have children. This is true of most religions. This is also true of Islam, which I'm not sure you would want to say. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm not sure you'd want to say is a force for good in the world. I don't think, in other words, that it's always a worthwhile trade-off. Now,
I agree with you, by the way.
Just because you mentioned
all right, okay,
how
we're on the same page,
the sort of culture of Europe and its success and America.
Before he goes on to that, shout out to Bill Bradley. Welcome to the party. Sorry for the quality. My computer is ishing the bed. It actually oh, I'm tempted. Let's give it. I'm gonna give it one more try. Bill Bradley says, not randomly killing other members of one's own group is evolutionary. Bees don't randomly kill other members of the hive. No need for religion or moral, just evolution. Exactly. All the things that we've been talking about. We just don't need a God. We just don't need a God for them to be. All right. All right. All right. Okay. So we're going to try this one last time. This is the last time. If this doesn't work. Oh, wait. Where were we? We're at 3657. 3657. Okay. Feels so much better. Feels so much better. I feel like I'm at home. But absolutely, Bill Bradley, welcome to the party. Zippy the Strange is only half done with his coffee. Fair enough. Said Islam is
The sort
with
of
poverty and brainwashing. One empowers the other. The dogma is an excuse via those in power. Always has been. Always has been. That's always been what it was.
religion can make people happier. It can make people more socially cohesive. It can promote people to start families and have children. This is true of most religions. This is also true of Islam, which I'm not sure you would want to say. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm not sure you'd want to say is a force for good in the world. I don't think, in other words, that it's always a worthwhile trade-off. Now,
I agree with you, by the way.
Just because you mentioned how the sort of culture of Europe and its success and America is indebted to Christianity.
Just real quick. So what's been happening as I was on my laptop, it'll like cut in and cut out real quick. So I'm going to, if it cuts out, I'm going to try to see if it'll come back. Otherwise, I'll just, my laptop's still open. Just stick around and we will be right here. Bill Bradley says the real issue is creating a sense of in-group. In nature, you don't kill in-group, but you don't afford the same to out-group. That is true with or without religion. Exactly why we need the American identity. We need that in-group. We absolutely need that in-group bias. But we're just doing it on the wrong thing. It doesn't all the thing that's the in-group isn't do you believe in God or do you not believe in God? Is it do you believe in the American identity? Do you care about family? Do you care about community? Do you care about all of those things? Yeah, exactly. And Bill agrees. The nationalism was and is a powerful thing. Bill says what religion does is create shared culture, so a shared sense of in-group. But religion is not necessary to create that sense of in-group. That's what I've been trying to tell y'all. Bill comes in and doing the damn thing. Welcome.
The sort of culture of Europe and its success and America is indebted to Christianity. I mean, this is of course true in a sense, but there's been a recent revival, it seems. I don't really know quite
so much better.
how it's happened. I think it's got a lot to do with Tom Holland, maybe. That's the historian, not the super.
Oh, I was going to say, like, wait, what? What about Spider-Man? Okay.
Spider-Man.
This idea that
Although
actually
he's good too.
Actually, the great. I wonder what he would have to say on all of this. The Western civilization sort of depends and should be in gratitude to a religious tradition because it provided this kind of ethical framework in which this could have arisen. We hear about the scientific enlightenment. We hear about the grounding of ethics and God, the creation of natural rights, as if these things weren't established in resistance all the way along to the religious tradition.
Oh shit. That's a part. I didn't even think about that. We're going to run that back real quick. Sibby said, religion is part of a tradition and social evolution. The trouble is dogma creates tons of strife and chaos. Very true. But my man just dropped a bar right here. Listen to this.
The ground ethical framework in which this could have arisen. We hear about the scientific enlightenment. We hear about, the grounding of ethics and God, the creation of natural rights, as if these things weren't established in resistance all the way along to the religious tradition. A society that today, I'll expand on this if you like, a society today that decides that religion throughout its history has been wrong about the position of women in society, wrong about the mortal fate of practicing homosexuals, wrong about the position of the earth in relation to the sun, wrong about the age of both of those celestial bodies, wrong about the common evolutionary ancestry of every animal, including the human animal on planet Earth, wrong about the ownership of other human beings as private property.
Oh, well, that's a big one, right? I mean, the Bible got slavery wrong. Look like a goofball.
Now has to contend with a religious tradition that doesn't come to us with contrition and apology and say, well, maybe we were wrong about these things. But no, these are all our things after all. We're going to claim these things. That is, I know that St. Paul says, I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over a man. Rather, she should remain silent. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And that man is the glory of God.
That's a joke.
But woman is the glory of man. But don't you know that the social justice movement is essentially Judeo-Christian in origin? I know that the Old Testament not only explicitly condones the ownership of other human beings as private property, but gives detailed instructions about exactly how to buy and indeed take them, sometimes including as sexual property. But don't you know
And put a 1 in the chat if you're not familiar with the instructions on slavery in the Bible, which I'm sure very many of you are not familiar with. Bill says, to my mind, the real issue is cultural chauvinism that arises in any group that feels their culture is superior. For example, Westerners seem to think that all the world wants is Western liberal democracy. I think the real issue is that everyone thinks their outlook is the best outlook and everyone else should want it. That is true, independent of religion. I agree. However, I don't think that this being a problem, I guess more specifically this being a problem, I don't think that cultural chauvinism, the effects of the chauvinism are a problem. I do not think that the chauvinism itself is a problem. Meaning, I don't think it's wrong or bad to think that America has the best, that America has the best culture, that America is where you want to be, that, Western culture is better than Islamic culture, all that kind of stuff. It's when again, it's the second part when we go and say, okay, because we are right, you have to live like we want to live. That's the problem. That's the problem. And it absolutely is independent of religion. I forgot what I asked. What was the I always do this. Sorry, guys. I'm on my game tonight. The Bible. Slavery verses in the Bible. And it's right there. So we start off right on top. Ephesians 6, chapter 6, verses 5-8. Paul states, slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling, in sincerity of heart as to Christ. 30 plus. All right. So let's just go down the list. 1 Corinthians 7:21. Were you a slave when you were called? Don't let it trouble. What in the? Don't let it trouble you. Although if you can gain your freedom, do so. All right. So they say, hey, if you can get out, get out. But you're still a slave. Peter. Chapter 2:16, live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover up for evil. Live as God's slaves. Where is the real? There we go. Deuteronomy. Okay, if a slave has taken refuge with you, do not hand them over to their master. Oh, that one actually sounds good. Deuteronomy 24:7. If someone is caught kidnapping a fellow Israelite and treating or selling them as a slave, the kidnapper must die. You must purge evil from among you. Okay, so we got some good ones and some bad ones. Fair enough. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and sincerity. Oh, we have read that one already. And as masters, treat your slaves the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven. There's no favoritism with him. Long story short, it's whatevs. It's whatevs. Sibi said, to be fair, the Earth being the center of the solar system, etc., was more due to the limits of science. As for slaves, the Bible was made in era of functional slave empires. So, second part, completely agree. I would think that if a god knew what was going to happen in 2023, then in 5 BC or 30 AD, he would maybe not inspire shit like this, but and to the first part, also very true. However, the issue was not the fact that they didn't know. It was what they did to Galileo when he was like, hey, wait, look what I found out. And they were like, no, God said this, so you die. Now you die. That's the issue. I agree. But what does the UN do? Tell everyone in the world to be more like liberal democracies. I mean, hey, you will not find me dick riding the UN. I am right there with you. I am right there with you. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I mean, the numbers are low, but you guys came through. Like, honestly, this has been the worst stream. I am. Thank you. Bill said, a major aspect of the international courts is to force the concepts of liberal democracy on the world. I think it goes as far as what we call war crimes. And this is kind of why I'm like, yeah, at the end of the day, unless it's like Holocaust level, like Mao Zedong level, Stalin level, maybe let them figure it the fuck out. Maybe we don't need to be involved. Just maybe.
Only explicitly condones the ownership of other human beings as private property, but gives detailed instructions about exactly how to buy and indeed take them, sometimes including as sexual property. But don't you know that the abolitionist movement was essentially Judeo-Christian in origin? Yes, I know that Galileo was shown the instruments of torture by the Inquisition for having the temerity to suggest that the Earth might orbit the sun rather than the other way around. But
that, again, Zippy, that is the part. It's not about the fact that they had it wrong. It's about the fact that they wanted to kill him. Bill says, nah, they talk about human rights violations, but human rights as defined by Western culture. It's not just war crimes. No, I agree with you. I'm saying that's what it should be. Like what we, if we were all going to sit down and determine like, okay, what are the things that cross the line that we should go over to another country, another continent and get involved militarily? Those things. However you want to define them, not as the UN defines them. I'm saying as we define them. Is it going to be more just typical internal conflict in an organization where Galileo got caught in the crossfire? I mean, anything is possible. I wasn't there, so it could be. I cannot say that I know that that's not the case, but I mean, that's certainly not the way the Christians tell it. And you would think that if anybody else would have a reason to twist the story in the favor of Christians, it would be the Christians. Still some classical liberalism with the Western construct. Yeah, fair enough. Some of the rules and engagements are probably a good idea. Yeah, just the bare minimum stuff. That like, okay, if you're, if you're just going after innocent civilians, just going house to house, mowing people down, like, okay, maybe your government can deal with that first. But it's the government doing. Okay, now we can talk about getting involved with the military. What, the government's just in this other country is just going door to door, spraying bullets and killing innocent people. Like, okay, now we can have a conversation as to what are we going to do. But before that, mind your own business.
But don't you know that the scientific revolution, which he authored, was essentially Judeo-Christian in origin? I'd find it funny if it wasn't so offensive.
So if you're missing what he's doing, is showing the dichotomies. Is that here's the good in religion, but here's the bad in religion. Here's the bad and here's the good in that the history of religion. Here's the bad in the history of religion, and it's just one for one.
To the people who established these very developments against the very religious traditions that now want to claim them as their own.
Okay, so I would buy that, except for the fact that many of the people that you mention in these contexts explicitly counted themselves as religious believers and were speaking in the name of the religion while they're doing it. So to take the abolitionist movement as an example, I mean, William Wilberforce, obviously a tremendously religious person and a big believer in the New Testament. Isaac Newton, obviously deeply ensconced in the New Testament, right? Yeah, certainly important to the scientific revolution. The point about religion, and this is why when I wrote my book, I have to name the title now and plug myself because that's the way it works.
To wave around,
the right side of history. But the reason that I talked about how reason and moral purpose made the West is because I think that one of the fundamental precepts of at least Judeo-Christian religion is that when God gives a text or a set of ideas to human beings, he expects us to use our reason to apply to those texts. And
that's a whole can of worms right there. If I was God, I'll just be like, hey, here's the deal. Not like, I'm going to give you a puzzle, and some of you are going to figure it out, and some of you are going to get so close, but not really. Zuby said to Bill, the only problem with democracy is it shifts to a slave empire ran by a socialist nobility. The UN is a socialist communist organization. Choice to come around? Yep.
And so the sort of evolution of interpretation is part of the religious tradition. I mean, that's always been the case in my religion anyway. So I always hesitate to speak on behalf of other people's religions because I don't know them nearly as well as I know my own. So when I talk about sort of the application of reason to tradition in the religious tradition, obviously we have books and books and books of texts discussing and debating these very ideas. And the idea of religious debate has always been central to the idea of Judeo-Christian religion. And when it hasn't been, it's been seen as repressive and has spawned then other Christian movements that then argue with the original movement and end up generating in almost Hegelian fashion some new form of interpretation. The point that I'm making is that outside that framework, it doesn't exist, meaning that if the argument is over interpretation of particular biblical verses in a context in which there is a God who puts certain moral precepts beyond human judgment.
Okay, so if it's based on your interpretation of the verses, basically what you just said, if it's based on the interpretation,
those arguments you can have without threatening the entire social structure. What is very difficult is to have a social.
So he's saying if you have different interpretations of religious text, that doesn't have to crumble society. Fair enough.
Structure at all in the absence of fundamental moral precepts that are presupposed by.
What?
Those arguments you can have without threatening the entire social structure. What is very difficult is to have a social structure at all in the absence of fundamental moral precepts that are presupposed by everyone.
Oh, okay. So what he's saying is the absence of a fundamental moral precepts that are presupposed by everyone, having a code of morality. That's what he's saying. What's really hard is to have a society where not everybody agrees on the rules. So the American identity fits right in there and perfectly solves every issue that Ben has had so far. Listen to it one more time.
Context in which there is a God who puts certain moral precepts beyond human judgment. Those arguments you can have without threatening the entire social structure.
So again, you can have a religious good, religious bad without crumbling society.
What is very difficult is to have a social structure at all in the.
So it's difficult to have a social structure at all
Absence of
without
fundamental moral precepts
that
are presupposed by everyone.
That everybody accepts.
And I think one of the reasons that you're seeing a sort of revival of this idea that religion is very important to the West is because one of the things that we have seen is that as religion has become less important to the West, we've seen declining birth rates en masse. We've seen rises in suicidal ideation. We've seen, especially over the last 10 years, tremendous individual atomization, certainly an extraordinary amount of less social connection.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you, Bill. And indeed, the issue is shared culture, and Shapiro seems to think that it is not possible without religion. An assessment I disagree with. I said shit. Me too. That's what this whole channel is about, guys. We should not be at odds with Ben Shapiro. We agree that shared issue is the problem and the solution. But he's saying, as a Jewish person, that he needs to be within these framework of this type of religion. Make that make sense. It's so important that we have shared culture, but you can have that one or this one or this one.
What? Right, all of these things.
I missed this one. Zippy says, unfortunately, democracy leads to bureaucracies that devour people by democratic will. Much like how religion is a distraction, so is democracy. It's a dead end. The decline from loss of jobs and monopolists destroying the world economy. It does seem like that, but I don't know that it's the system. I think it's the people. And the way that we've created the system is to leave enough room for the people who want to fuck things up to come in and twist the dials a little bit, where it's not me and you, voting on this stuff. It's just like what they want. Shout out to Inverted Mystic over on Twitch. Welcome to the party. So this guy can say religion is the progenitor of most laws and morality, which is true, but also can't say without religion, you can't be a good person. Exactly. I completely agree. You've hit the nail on the head. And this is, we're kind of circling it over and over and over again, but I need you guys to understand that every different argument comes back to what Inverted Mystic is saying, what Bill Bradley is saying, what I have been saying, that yes, we agree. We need to have these values that we agree on, but we already do. How we came to the values, whether you believe rationally this is the best way to go, or you believe that God said it, therefore, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Exactly. All systems are corruptible. This system was set up with checks and balances to try to limit the corruption. But it seems it was not to disagree with that. But I don't think that it means. Are we good? Yeah, all right, we did it. All right. Yeah, exactly. So the fact that it has to do with shared culture, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you came to those values. It just matters that you share those values. Inverted Mystic said religion is already instilled into our culture. So as long as you have the culture, you don't need religion anymore. The problem comes when you start asking why we have these laws and morality. I mean, I agree. I absolutely agree with the first part, but I don't even agree with the second part, that there is no problem that comes with asking why we have these laws, because we should have answers to those questions. Answers besides God said. We should have answers to those questions. We shouldn't be making laws for no reason. We should be making laws based on logic, rationality, reality, and practicality. As we said, without jobs, people become listless. It's like with the opium wars in China. Because of bad government and bad markets, the people gave up and did drugs. I didn't need that to do drugs. I was just like, fuck it. Gontex said, we may live on the backs of giants, but does that mean you need the giants' whole backstory to appreciate it? Guys, I think we have a comment of the night. Shout out to Quantech. We may live on the backs of giants. What does that mean? You need the giant's entire backstory to appreciate it? No, not at all. Not at all. Well said, sir. Well said.
Things, atomization, certainly an extraordinary amount of less social connection, right? All of these things are things that, frankly, used to be provided by church and these social institutions that, again, were oriented toward a single purpose. So when you talk about the idea,
because you couldn't get them anywhere else.
Yeah, that I'm going to put aside the free will discussion, because I think, again, it's easy to get caught up in the reversion to the argument that I was making before when you were saying,
because you're wrong,
that, can you argue the man out of stabbing you? To use your framework, I mean, you can't argue him out of doing anything. I mean, you're going to say words, the words are going to have an impact, but you can't argue him out of doing anything. But
so how is that not the end of the conversation? How is that not the end of the conversation? If there is a possibility that your ideology can be used by a crazy person to justifiably murder innocent people, then it's not a good ideology, regardless of what's in it. Full stop.
Not to get back into a topic that we've handled. Free will is done.
I'm not gonna answer that. Although hopefully people will know from what I said before that I think it's still sensible to say you can argue somebody out of something.
Yep.
The first half of what you say there is, in so many words, I think what I was saying before, which is that yes, this goes both ways. That is, thanks be to God when He is able to provide us with the grounding for resisting oppression and throwing off tyranny.
Yeah.
But what about when the same God is used to justify the exact opposite? All I'm saying is that this goes both ways.
So again, yeah, praise be to God when good things happen because of God. What about when bad things happen because of God?
And we'll never know.
But you're going to have to weigh in one side or the other. In terms of utility, right? You're building a society. Let's say that I won't say you're God. Let's say that you are master of a society and you get to build that society. One of the things that presumably you are going to do is you're going to build in certain things that are untouchable, right? There's going to be certain moral precepts that you're going to build in that are untouchable. And how are you going to justify those things to people such that they are going to believe you? You're going to either have to use compulsion or you're going to have to use some sort of other argument that is so strong that they are going to overweigh their self. I mean, there's a reason why Voltaire suggested he didn't believe in God, but he hoped that his maid did, so she wouldn't steal the silverware. Yeah,
that's an interesting indictment on the position that theists don't say that atheists can't be moral, right? When people have this argument about morality.
Here we go. That believers say that atheists can't be moral. This really grinds my gears.
Atheists can certainly be moral.
Well, oftentimes people have this misunderstanding of the argument. Christopher Hitchens did it best in saying, we don't need divine permission to be good and all of this. Fine, but as you say, you don't need to believe in God to be good, but you need to believe in God to ground that goodness. But then when you sort of casually throw in this statement by Voltaire, I don't believe in God, but I hope that my maid does. That implies that actually maybe you do think that without the belief in God, somebody isn't going to.
No, I think that Voltaire thought that he was good, meaning that Voltaire was an atheist and thought that he was good. But his point was sort of back to the Straussian Platonic point.
His point was that he hoped his maid believed in God because without that belief, she wouldn't be able to act morally.
Right. Because again, when we're arguing on the basis of broad societal utility, one of the things. So I happen to be in the
So let's stick on that. I'm not super familiar with that quote. I'm not super familiar with Voltaire, to be honest. But the idea that I don't believe in God, but I hope my maid does, so she doesn't steal the silverware, I think is very, very, very strong in Ben's argument. Because remember, it's not, is this true? The question is religion good or bad for society? And I think for right now, it is good for society. It's not true. And so we should be moving to a place where it is not good for society to believe in false things. However, that's where we are. So when there are people like me, like atheists here, like Alex O'Connor, who don't believe in God and yet still have a morality. But Ben brings out a quote like what Voltaire said. Voltaire understanding like, okay, I'm not going to steal shit just because I don't believe in God. But I don't know that she's not going to steal shit if she doesn't believe in God. That is, that's Islam for you, buddy. I think if Ben clamps down on that, then he might have an argument in that, like, okay, fine, Alex, you're a good person and you don't need a God. Do you think that applies to everybody? That is the only argument here. That, okay, it can be done, but in the same way that we're like, I mean, there could be people who use God for good or God for bad. Well, there could be, ways that that atheism or a lack of God is used for good or bad. Which good is better and which bad is worse? Bill Bradley said, I'm not sure religion is the focal point per se. Atheists killed a bunch of people in the USSR and the Chinese Cultural Revolution, stamping out religion being part of the goal. Cultural chauvinism is the issue for me. What about zeal of all stripes? Live and let live should be the goal in my mind. The only thing I'll push back on is that the atheists of the USSR were not they were not following it was outside of the atheism. There's nothing within atheism that, like, the atheists who killed a bunch of people in the USSR, they also brushed their teeth. They also shat sitting down. That's just a thing about people. And so I'm not going to completely just say like religion was not a part of it, but it's very, very different when the ideology is pushing it versus the ideology not stopping it. That's the difference, specifically with the USSR. It's not that the atheism was pushing the violence. It's simply that the atheism was not stopping it. Watch out. Yeah, gotcha. Inverted Mystic said, some people would say communism is a religion. And I said, shit, me too. Bill Bradley said it was that communism sees religion as a challenge, that communism sees religion as a challenge to state authority. And yeah, but that's communism. That's not atheism. They might unfortunately go hand in hand throughout history, but they're very, 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 very different things. But also, the desire I have, no religion was pushing the violence. I would call that atheist. The desire to have no religion was pushing. Yeah, but the desire to have no religion has nothing to do with atheism. The desire to have no religion existing has nothing to do with whether or not you personally accept a truth claim in as to a God or not. I understand the connection. I'm not saying that they're not connected. I'm saying they are very different in the sense that they were atheists, and because of the religions, they wanted to kill people. It was not atheism itself. There's nothing within atheism that says you have to get rid of religion. That doesn't happen. But there is doctrines within religions that said you have to get rid of atheists and apostates. So it's not the same thing. It was terrible. It was horrible. But just because you kill somebody and you happen not to believe in God doesn't mean the atheism is making you do anything.
Happy position of being able to argue that what I think is socially useful also happens to be true. Mm-hmm. The question I'm asking you, and I think that's what a lot of this conversation is whether you think that what is socially useful is actually false or an evolutionary illusion. And I think that's kind of the
I mean, they're kind of the same thing. I would say both, but if I have to pick, what did he say? What or evolutionary illusion? I would say the second.
useful is actually false or an evolutionary illusion.
I think it's false and it's an evolutionary illusion. But if we're talking about just utility, then I would say evolutionary illusion, because there is utility. Inverted Mystic said, well, if you religiously follow the idea that there is no possible way there is a God, then you could consider that a religion. Most atheists are agnostic. If God came to an atheist, they would likely be like, okay, I was wrong. If God came to a communist, they would be like, I'm insane, put me on that. I don't know if that was meant to be a communism burn, but fuck communism. No, you're absolutely right. But again, there's a separation between the ideology telling you to do a thing versus an ideology that allows you to do bad things. In Islam, you are the Quran tells you that apostates must die. There's nothing about how you treat religious people in atheism. Atheism is just the I don't know response to the question, do you believe in a God or gods? Find in that where it says kill religious people. It doesn't exist. It can be added, but it's not part of that. You have, let's say you have an anime picture, right? So let's say you like anime. And in anime, they there's the whole dubs or subs argument, right? That's about as much as I know about anime. Some people who like dubs will jack off 3 times a week, 3 times a day, I mean. And some people who like the subs will jack off 3 times a week, 3 times a day. I keep saying it. And some people of the subs will be normal people, and some people that. So what I'm saying is, the being an anime fan does not have any effect on how much you jerk off. Just like being an atheist has no effect on how you feel about killing religious people. Shout out to Guam Tech. Thank you so much for coming out. You have a good one. Thank you. Dumpster for the illiterate. I like. Well, I'm not an anime person, but like when I watch Squid Games and shit like that, I mean, maybe it's not. You guys, anime people, tell me if it's only an anime thing. Because I'm not fucking sitting there reading a fucking TV show. Get the fuck out of my face. And I use captions for everything, as you can see. But I'm not doing that. That's like being on the phone with no. So is that just an anime thing? Or is that like a TV media wide, like, subs are for the cool kids and dubs are for the losers? Just curious. Yep, exactly. Correlation does not mean causation. Exactly. Depends on the voice actors on either dubs or subs. Fair enough. Okay. Inverted Mystic said, "Nah, you can watch other films from other countries." Right. But we're saying, do you watch the subtitles or the audio dubs? And I'm aware of the kind of split between the two camps in the anime scene. I don't watch anime, so I don't really know. I was just wondering if that was an anime thing or if that's just in general. If you watch stuff for other from other countries, like, oh, you watch the dub? What a loser! I don't know. Just curious. Bill said, I like hearing the emotional inflections of the original end of someone yes. It's just a thing where there's not enough that I mean, dilly, I guess. But like, you have to ask Koreans. Okay, so I guess it's not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. Bill has a point here. But like when I watched Money Heist, when I watch Squid Game, any of those things, I'm watching the dubs because I can very easily get into the story. Like I find it very easy. Like I don't know. There's certain things that will take me out of the show, but a lot of times I find like I'm just along for the ride. Unless it's like really bad. Unless it's really bad. Like Netflix, when they put stuff out now, especially because of the ableism and not the trans, but the ableist. You can't be ableist. And if you can't hear, you can't see, then they gotta. So the voice actors have gotten pretty good. But yeah. It definitely is different, but for me personally, it's just not enough it's not different enough that I'm going to read a TV show. Like, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here, you goddamn nerd. All right, where were we?
The question I'm asking you, and I think that's what a lot of this conversation is whether you think that what is socially useful is actually false or an evolutionary illusion.
Both.
And I think that's kind of the position that you're taking, unless you want to argue that generally speaking, religion is either not evolutionarily adaptive, which would be a hard position to actually take.
Well, I think it must be, otherwise it wouldn't exist.
Or you'd have to argue that it's, even if it's adaptive, it's of no general benefit to humankind or is an illusion, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the position that you're taking. So one of the things that I'm enjoying about the conversation is that I don't think either of us are going to argue each other in anything, but it is clarifying what exactly the lines of the division are.
Yes, to backtrack a moment, because you said more than one thing in what I just responded to. You also mentioned, you talked about Isaac Newton being a Christian. So, I mean, people were astonished discovering his private notes to find that he spent more time
hit the ball
talking about theology than he did science. This is certainly the case, but I do think it's worth pointing out when people like to notice that the originators of the scientific revolution in particular were believers in God. There are a few things to say on that. First, we don't know what Galileo thought in his heart of hearts, and part of the reason for that is because despite tripping over himself to say, now look, I don't think scripture is wrong, now look, I believe in God and I am a Christian and I believe in scripture, but maybe the earth orbits the sun.
I'm just saying. Straight to jail. Inverted Mystic said, couldn't you make the argument that murder could be more of a crime under atheism than in religion? It depends on the circumstances, sure. I think, yeah, I mean, definitely. Well, I mean, in certainly in Islam, then okay, I see your next comment where you're going, but I'll get there in a second. So where I went with it is certainly in Islam. It specifically says to kill apostates. Apostate being somebody who was part of the religion and leaves. That's like part of the rules. You are supposed to die. Gay people supposed to die. Adultery, you're supposed to die. So it's those aren't crimes at all. But so you were talking about just the notion of, the values that we have, and if you believe in an afterlife, then it's not as bad to kill somebody than if you believe that's just the end. That's a good question. I think that it is it's tough. That's tough. I think I see what you're saying. That's a tough one. I don't think it could be less or more of a crime, but I do see what you're saying, that religious people can sometimes treat life on earth as a waiting room. They're like, you're just here and then whatever, and then you're forever. And so, yeah, I definitely see that. Definitely see that.
His life falls apart. So suppose he did secretly have doubts about the existence of God. Do you think we'd ever have even found out about it?
And that's an unfalsifiable argument.
I think not a chance. In other words,
but the lack of falsifiability makes it difficult for making a counter argument.
In other words, let's not be so
maybe
confident.
Maybe he did have a secret diary, but I have no proof that he had a secret diary.
What I'm saying is, let's not be so confident about this. The second thing to say is that these men, if that's what they were remembered for, that is their theology, then they wouldn't be remembered. Thirdly, is that just on the minor point that people often like to point out, that, well, the originators of the scientific revolution were religious, and so science can't conflict with religion. I'm not going to make the claim that science does conflict with religion in principle, but supposing that it did, this would not serve as a rebuttal, because if it were the case that the scientific revolution and the scientific method undermines religion, then of course the people who invented the scientific method would themselves have been religious, because they hadn't invented the mechanism by which it came to be undermined yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if I'll come back to this, Bill. So basically what he's saying is that it makes sense that the people who discovered all this scientific stuff were religious, because they didn't yet, though they were the ones that discovered the tools to be able to say, oh wait, maybe religion isn't right, or maybe there's something else here, or maybe we need to look at this differently. Makes sense to me. So the argument that, well, Galileo was a Christian, well, Newton was a Christian, well, yeah, everybody was a Christian. They didn't die, they didn't do their thing yet. So Bill says communism is the final form of socialism, if we want to get technical. Lenin said the goal of socialism is communism. So socialism is a centrally planned command economy in the hopes of creating enough abundance that the concepts of commodity, currency, government lose all meaning, and then you achieve communism, that unrealistic theory. Oh, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up, have to stand in line for bread? Inverted Mystic said, I'll communism pill the entire chat, even though I'm a right winger. Let's go. Gang, do it up. Do it up. I am here for that. Well, just in case you want to do it directly and come on over to the YouTube stream, let me drop that link for you. But hey, bring it. Bring it. I would love if you could communism pill any one of us. That would be awesome.
It would
then
be like
afterward,
saying
they presumably would be irreligious or a-religious,
It
right?
does-
which is what happened to Darwin, for example.
it doesn't
right?
happen that quickly, right? It really doesn't
That's not
happen.
true. On an individual level, it certainly
if we're talking about
happens
the, if
quickly.
I remember hearing this. This is a great point. So remember, we established the idea that, well, of course, the people who discovered this stuff were religious because they hadn't yet discovered this stuff to refute the religion.
talking about the development of the scientific method. We're not talking about the kind of thing that just happens in a lifetime. I mean, to attribute it to Galileo and Newton as we happily do is far too simplistic. This is something that happens over at least decades.
Right,
and
but
possibly
you're making
hundreds of
both an
years.
individual argument and a broader historical argument. So
Yes.
pick one.
Fair.
And so
Yep.
what I'm saying is that the individual beliefs of the founders of that revolution, I don't think that revolution would have gotten off the ground enough from just their contributions within their lifetime to shake decades of prior faith. However, when you get to someone like a Darwin, then we start to see agnosticism. Then we start to see people having their doubts. And then when you get into the modern era, atheism abounds. And so, in other words, if it were the case that this thesis, which, like I say, is not something that I'm defending here, I'm just sort of rebutting the rebuttal to it. That is, if it were the case that the scientific method were this king of undermining religion, then I think we would expect the fact that those who invented it to have been religious. It would be like saying, isn't it amazing that the person who invented the motor car didn't own a motor car before that?
Well, no.
It seems pretty simple when you put it that way, right? It seems pretty simple when you put it that way. When all these scientist people, well, they were all Christians. Yeah, it's like, well, the first, what did he say? The guy who invented was Ford the guy who invented it, or did he just invent a particular type? But either way, the guy who invented the car didn't own a car before he invented the car. Inverted Mystic said Marx. So the capitalist had alienated the worker from the results of his labor, forcing him to become enslaved by the machine. What do you see now? We have all these technological advancements, but are they helping people? People keep saying automation doesn't just create or destroy jobs, it transforms them. Good point. But ask yourself, this is why should ask yourself this: why should the burden of innovation be placed on the worker? Machines are supposed to improve to benefit humanity, not the other way around. Why should the burden of innovation be placed on the worker? I don't don't know that this is. I mean, because I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you implying that that we should be able to create machines that do the innovation for us? Because I would like to introduce you to ChatGPT or DALL-E or Midjourney. We are already there. The centralization peaks fast, then starts generating diminishing returns as the bureaucracy becomes more and more inefficient, writing off losses to someone else as the whole system falls apart. Yeah, but I actually want to, what you said before, Zippy, is I missed this one, but very important. But so we were talking about communism. Bill was talking about communism and how socialism is the end. And he says true, but as he said, any system can be abused. So I don't think that just because two primary examples of it were godless does not mean that it could not have used God to do the same things. And basically, just going back to causation does not mean, or correlation does not mean causation.
Because again, you've now also made the case that perhaps they had secret diaries, or in their heart of hearts they weren't actually religious or convinced away from that. So again, that's why I'm saying I feel like you're making a broader historical argument that works, and I think you're making an individual argument that doesn't quite.
I'm not saying
Meaning
that is the case. I'm saying that we would never know because why is that? Why will we never know what Galileo really thought about religion?
Well, I'm going to just accuse.
Why would he's not here? He's dead.
You of assuming facts, not in evidence.
Yes.
For something higher because they thought that that was their godly duty to do so. I mean, this has been true since the time of Roger Bacon. I mean, the idea that you have people who are specifically seeking out the nature of the universe because there's an understandable, again, another religious precept, there's an understandable universe that God has created, and your mind is a reflection of certain truths that are in that universe. These are all non-materialist atheistic concepts. That was the basis for virtually all of science, including the origins of the scientific revolution. Now, you can make the argument very easily. I mean, I make it all the time because I have to metaphoricalize the beginning of Genesis, for example, that the words of Genesis don't jibe with the words of science when it comes to the age of the universe, for example. And obviously that's true, which is why both Maimonides and Aquinas are talking about in the Middle Ages, the idea that if science comes into conflict with religion, you're either getting one of them wrong or you're getting both of them wrong. And so the constant sort of reinterpretation of religion in light of the facts that are established by the scientific method, I don't think that that's a rebuttal of religion. And so and more than that, I think that the peculiar idea that religion itself must fundamentally be undermined by scientific discovery, I don't see quite why.
Well,
I'm going to run that back real quick, but Inverted Mystic has a novel here. Said, no, well, like people say, you need to change your skills in order to keep yourself relevant in the future labor force. When the whole point of automation was supposed to make it easier for humanity, the automation is being used for the individual and not for humanity as a whole. And that's the case with automation is the enemy of the people who are not in control of automation. Am I wrong? I'm not an anti-chatbot personally, but I'm anti-automation talking low-skilled labor away. No, I don't agree. I think that this is what they was it Aristotle who said that we shouldn't start writing things down because people would forget things. And then every new technology has this kind of alarmist, it's going to be the end of everything. And maybe in tandem with the corrupt nature of the economic system, maybe the automation plus the corruption, maybe you have a point there. But this is just the next wave of new technology, and I apologize whoever said it before. That didn't you say it right here? Or did you say it in the last one? Yeah, you said it yourself. People keep saying automation doesn't just create or destroy jobs; it transforms them. So that's what I think it is. I think that we're going to move in the direction of people doing things that are more in line with keeping the systems that are doing the actual work, just keeping the systems going. So instead of needing 10 subway conductors, they're automated, and you have one guy who runs the whole shit. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But again, though, yes, those jobs are gone, but as you said, they don't destroy the jobs. They just transform them. And so now the person who was just, who was driving the train, now you have to be somebody who can not only drive a train, but keep an eye on 5 and 6 and however many lines there are in the subway and all that. So I don't know. It's very difficult. It's very tricky, and it could be, but it's hard to pin it down on the one thing. Very Mystic, I'm cool with it transforming the jobs, but what about in the meantime, while people are learning the skills, are we gonna pay for us to learn the new skills? Nope. You get paid for the value that you create, and so it's each of our responsibilities to keep up with what's going on and not get left behind. And we all know the boomer mindset of not even trying to send an email before they or excuse me, not even trying to figure out how to send an email before son, daughter, nephew, niece, can you come do this for me? It's a giving up. And I mean, yeah, if you do give up, then yeah, you're going to die. Or you can learn to use your skills, the skills that you have, and apply them to the new landscape of society. But that's always how it is. That's always how life is. You either take the skills you have and apply them to society and get money for them, or you don't. Now, I do think we will get to a tipping point where the automation has gotten to a point where and the automation has gotten to such a high point, and society itself has not advanced to the point where we have all these jobs for people to do. So you're talking about in the meantime, yeah, it's going to be people who learn their analog, let's call it, pre-AI skills. They're going to use their pre-AI skills for something in the post-AI world that's not AI, or they die. Just like today, if you don't know how to use the internet, you either use the tools that you have pre-internet in a post-internet world, or you die.
I would agree with that. I'm just saying that the rebuttal that's presented to that opinion fairly commonly, I don't think works for the reasons that I've said.
Okay, well let's have a
Exactly. Bill Bradley, this is the Luddites were people that feared the Industrial Revolution because they thought people were going to be out of work. But I agree, there will be a tipping point likely at some point. Yeah, I think specifically with automation, it's a different type of new technology. So I do take the point that at some point when everything is controlled by one dude who's got a dial and, just whatever, then yes, something like a universal basic income or something like that, again, is a conversation that I'm at that point will be willing to have. I'm not saying we should do it, but I'm just saying that at that point it would be relevant. Right now, it's just like Bill was saying. It's just humans humaning.
I'll give you both a little breather because we're going to go to another break very shortly.
Nah,
we
good.
fitted in so much.
No?
That I'm going to be left unemployed.
Before we move on, I don't know if I can have one final word on this Galileo point.
No.
I know it seems quite strange that I'm sort of hypothesizing in this way, but you said that when religion and science come into conflict, either one is wrong or both is wrong. Galileo was wrong about one of these things potentially. What happens if you can? It's great talking about the utility of his religious belief and inspiring his scientific endeavor. But what happens when the immediate fruit of that is him discovering something which should have been a celebrated idea and instead was suppressed, and he ends up under house arrest in Tuscany for the rest of his life? Why? Specifically because the religious authorities, in their sentencing of Galileo, did not just say that he failed to prove it, did not just say that he was, being a bit of an a-hole in his approach to the thing, but said specifically because it is false, absurd, and contrary to Scripture. That is why that scientific position was suppressed on specifically religious motivations.
And far be it from me to defend the Catholic Church and its crackdown on
okay.
Galileo.
So, Invert Mystic is talking about there was a large alarmism in the Industrial Revolution, but that didn't take all the jobs, and AI potentially could. So again, I think we will get to a point where a UBI discussion becomes relevant, and maybe after the point at which you need to figure out what you're going to do next, because the pre-AI world is over and we've crossed the singularity. And then I think it's going to be such a drastic change that we won't be talking about society in the same way. We won't need merit in the same way. We won't need capitalism in the same way that we need it today because of how different AI will be. So for us to try to predict what AI will even do, much less how we are going to respond to what it will do, is just a kind of it's just a shot in the dark. But I do take your point. It's definitely something to be worried about it. As just says, and I agree. If you do not follow the job market, you gonna die. Yeah. Vertimistic said, I see the Industrial Revolution as just taking some AI is coming to mop up the rest. It's just taking some AI is coming to mop up the rest. Maybe we're all in big trouble, but I don't know. AI can't do this. You know what I mean? Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
The wrong place for that.
Okay, it's time. It's time for another break. Here, you are watching and listening to the big conversation from Premier on binge is really fitting.
Oh, Jesus. Are we struggling again? All right, we got it. Hold on. The difference with AI is that it can replace white collar jobs. Machine learning was just taking blue collar jobs. True. It can't do that yet. Give it 10 years. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. There's definitely a reckoning coming. There's definitely something that's going to change. I'm just not. I'm comfortable with sitting in the position of something gonna happen. I don't know what it is, and I'm just gonna follow the job market, pay attention to this stuff, so that when it becomes reasonable to be like, okay, this is the way to go, then I'll make a decision. I guess nobody's really interested in that question, huh? But 2 to 1 subs just so you can be cool. Moving on.
Welcome back to part 3 of the big conversation from Premier Unbelievable. Today we are discussing religion and is it good or bad for society?
Since you guys were so helpful, so nice, and so supportive, we are going to run through the whole thing. We are at the 3-hour mark, but I don't mean you can't super chat, but I'm just saying we are going to run through the whole thing. Thank you for hanging out with me, guys, sticking with me through all the struggle streaming. You guys are awesome. So I guess we're finally getting to the fundamental question of whether or not it's good or bad for society.
And we're having a lot of fun with it, I think. I mean,
I
know
agree.
you're sort of in disagreement on things, but I think we're just having fun with it today, aren't we?
As ever.
Well,
I've been joined by Ben Shapiro and Alex O'Connor. And as I say, we're talking about religion and its role in society.
Hey, shout out to Inverted Mystic, part of the family. Welcome to the family. Cheers to Inverted Mystic. Zippy said, I mean, look at the gas and steam engine, invalidating most jobs in rural areas. The thing about AI is it will return power and efficiency to local markets, something many do not seem to understand. I am one of these people who don't understand, but when you say this, it makes 1,000% sense to me. Bill Bradley says, is religion good or bad with society? Yes.
One observation I've got from watching you guys talk, I wonder whether religion is being used as a bit of a catch-all term. You know, there is no summer festival where Ben and I would meet up because we're religious and have a beer together. You know, plenty of Buddhist people don't even believe in God. So we probably don't have the time to unpack it now, but religion is maybe not a helpful catch-all term at all points. I wonder whether...
So you're saying, what you're saying is that maybe the way that we use words when we talk to each other is very important. And using words that we think are the same, but using them in different ways is not good. Sounds like semantic obfuscation and linguistic creep.
Whether, when we're saying religion in this context, we mean the Judeo-Christian worldview. But it's interesting, you know, I, as a Christian, there's lots of things I agree with Ben on, some things I disagree on. Lots of things, as an Englishman, that I agree with Alex on, and other things that I wouldn't.
spelling.
So yes, spelling, absolutely. It's aluminium. Anyway, I just think that's interesting. I'm not trying to start this theist gang and gang up on you, Alex at all. But yeah, what do you think quickly about that when we're talking about religion? Do we need to be? Do we need?
Fine, where I don't understand. And I had a perfect joke. So we're going to run that back so I can make my joke. So semantically accurate. Kind of ties into the whole semantic obfuscation thing, eh? Ah, God damn it. Take 17 on the struggle stream.
And so, to the distinctions in Judaism and Christianity, which are
Yes, good, no, bad.
substantial, obviously. And so, I do believe that there are right forms of religion or righter forms of religion than others. If I didn't, then I wouldn't be a particularist in my religious practice or my religious belief. And so,
But even in that, and saying, well, some religions are better than others, based on what? Based on what? Other than the actual humanistic secular values, what are you using to determine that Judaism is better than Christianity or Jainism or Buddhism or anything else? I don't get it.
I do think that you're right to sort of boil down the question so that people don't end up defending things or being forced to defend things that they wouldn't defend. I mean, you mentioned before Islam. I'll say more radical forms of Islam because, again, I'm one thing that I tend not to do as a religious believer is simply take people's texts at sort of face value, because the reality is that very few people in religious
Do that.
circles take their text at like I can just pick up a Bible, read it, and now I know everything that's going on in the Bible. Bible value that really is not how the practice of religion works. I tend to actually
I hate this shit. I'm gonna deep breaths. Stay calm. We are chilling. All right. Bill Bradley says everyone thinks their personal moral outlook is the right outlook. Seems to be true of both the religious and the non-religious. Yeah, well, why would you act that way if you didn't think it was the right way to act, right?
One is a kinship structure. The problem with kinship and tribal structures is that they pretty quickly devolve into tribal warfare upon other members of different tribes. One of the things that religion has done is an attempt to universalize that beyond the immediate sort of tribal self-interest that we discussed a little bit ago. And again, pretty much universally, social science suggests that many of the institutions that we hold dear, that shape us, that provide us social support, that provide us friendship structures, marriages, that a huge amount of this used to happen anyway inside of these traditional religious structures, and there really has been nothing to replace it. And so the sort of breakdown of those structures, you could make the case, I suppose, for the breakdown of those structures, but there's been pretty much no replacement for those structures in secular society, and it's creating some pretty significant strains.
I agree, which is why instead of running back to religion, we need to strengthen those things in secular society. It's like this. I mean, a lot of you guys, well, I mean, there's only 3 here left, but you guys know I'm a dog trainer. So a lot of times that's how I think about these things. And it's like, if you have a dog that's not good with other dogs, then the worst thing you can do is freak out whenever you see another dog and be like, oh my God, we gotta go. Or if your dog is not good with other people, same thing. You can't just hope to shelter yourself or your people or your family or your society from the bad things by pretending that they don't exist. They do exist. So let's arm ourselves on how to deal with that. Bill said religion did not get rid of the tribal instinct. It increased what people considered their tribe. He's still talking about in-group and out-group. Yep.
On societal bonding.
Great.
I suppose I do have two things to say.
I'm going to ask you, I want you to say both of those things, but I want to ask you, Alex, can secular societies potentially achieve the same level of social cohesion as,
of course,
religious ones?
Potentially, maybe. I don't know. That seems to be an empirical question, insofar as we can have empirical data on social cohesion as
The answer is yes.
a subject. I wanted to, I suppose, in response to that question, mention the history of the United States as.
So before we go down that road, I do think that, again, it's what I'm bringing to the table with this American identity thing is not something that is just like a magic wand. You wave it and then religion is gone and everybody's perfect. No, it is a thing that would need to grow organically, grassroots, and it is a cohesive culture, in-group culture, where we can all be a part of it and feel like we're a part of it. And by that growing, we inherently make religion organically less useful because all of the utility that it has is already covered by our American culture. And if you want to believe, or you do believe in God and other things on top of that, that's great. But as Ben just said, without it, we're fucked.
Data on social cohesion as a subject. I wanted to, I suppose, in response to that question, mention the history of the United States as a constitutionally secular nation. Presumably the discussion there devolves into whether America can be described as a Christian nation or not. But based on what you just said a moment ago, before we maybe get into that, you said, of course, we need more specificity is hardly ever worse than less, and that you're not trying to defend all religious traditions. And then you say, but look, this idea of there being a God and there being an unalterable authority and a moral author of the universe is itself valuable, and without it, there are all kinds of societal discohesion comes about. In that case, for example, I wonder, and I hope it's not a crude question, and it's one sort of stemming from genuine interest. Would you rather?
Ooh, we got a would you rather. All right, everybody be prepared. Oh, there's somebody here. Bill and Zippy, and is that Mystic still here? Let me know. Would you rather?
Your child comes to you and says, I think I'm going to convert to Islam, or said, I don't think I believe in God anymore.
Ooh, I don't think we have any Christians here. God damn. I wish we did. That is a great question for a Christian. Bill Bradley says, part of the issue is we seem to no longer have any expectation of any level of assimilation. We become more and more just fragmented, competing cultures with almost no connection. Yep. And even on a simple level, like on it happens on many different levels. I talk about how, like, when Facebook used to be like my main thing, when it was first, kind of doing its thing, like, it was cool because it was an extension of real life. When you're on Facebook, you're talking to people that you knew in real life, and you're making plans to go out and meet them in real life. But then when that kind of faded away, and then we got to the whole global social media market of Instagram and TikTok and all these things, then that aspect of being tied to reality just went away. Competing cultures with almost no connection.
As a Jew, I'm fairly indifferent on the question, meaning that my priority is for my child to remain a Jew, and which direction they go from there is of much less interest to me than staying inside the religious tradition that I believe is correct.
Okay, that's kind of a cope, though. Which, like, obviously, yes, ideally, your kid stays Jewish. The question is, though, if the kid was not going to stay Jewish, would you rather them just say they're an atheist, they just don't believe in God anymore, or would you say they're picking up Islam?
Okay, maybe I should rephrase to say,
There you go.
suppose that, half of the US population
Okay.
immediately, right now, and half of, let's say half of the Christian population. So it's not to do with
Right.
Judaism, and it's not to do with your own family.
Okay, so we have of the entire population, all of the Christian people. We take half of those people. What's it?
Half of the Christian population in the United States are immediately going to convert today to atheism if you press this button, or to Islam if you press this button. Which one would you press?
All right, guesses. The first button is atheist. The second button is Islam. What do you think he is going to press? Would he prefer that half of the Christians in the world become atheists, or half of the Christians in the world become Muslims? Let's see.
So I'm going to ask for more specificity
Sure.
in line with the conversation. So which form of Islam are we talking about, and which form of atheism are we talking about? Because they come in various strains. But meaning, like, if we're just starting from the premise of no God or Islamic God, that actually is not enough information. Because as I say, I'm not judging people based on their faith propositions nearly as much as I am based on their behavior, which I think they base on faith propositions.
Well, let's
So
say this is the
That's a good clarifying question, because an atheist like me versus Bin Laden, like, that's an easy choice. But if you're moderate, average Muslim, and you're a raging, feminist atheist, that's a different situation.
only thing that changes. You press this button, half the Christian population become convinced that there is no real God of the universe. Everything else is random. Whatever you might, because what we're discussing here is essentially what are the implications of such a worldview?
Right.
What are the implications of atheism, which is just the disbelief in God, or the belief that
do
there is
people have
no God.
memories? Sorry, in this hypothetical, do people have memories or they don't have memories? Because this makes a difference.
They have memories.
Okay, fine. So then probably in the West, atheism, as opposed to a more radical form of Islam. That's why I was asking for specificity.
Well,
because
the
they're more
button
moderate
on the
forms.
right-hand side was going to be that they just become convinced that Muhammad is the final prophet of God.
Right.
That's it.
And again, I was going to ask for more specificity on that because I know many moderate Muslims who
Well, if I'm Alex here, then I'm saying you don't get specificity. You don't know, in the same way that you don't know, and the average person who is a who's a Christian, you don't know whether they're going to be crazy, this, that, or the other. They're just going to be a normal person who happens to believe in God. And so, I mean, I certainly understand why he's asking those questions. But even within the hypothetical, it should very easily be able to be answered as Bill did, very easily.
are not radical in the implication of their faith, as opposed to some who very much are quite radical in the implications of their faith. So, but let's, if you don't mind, I'm going to set up your hypothetical in a way that I think is more clarifying for me
Please.
anyway.
This is fun when you guys when we can find conversations when two people are at a similar level can throw these philosophical things back and forth. I'm having fun. I wish we didn't have all the issues before. I wish everybody didn't leave. The fact that you guys are here means so much to me, but I am having fun.
And that is button on the right is radical Islam, like Taliban style Islam.
Okay.
And button on the left is don't believe in God.
Well, I mean, you can do that.
No, the reason I'm doing that is because that elucidates a difference that I think is being obscured by the simple sort of
Right, but I think my thing's better. That he should be saying, radical Muslim or a radical leftist atheist. That should be the choice. So between let's ask you guys. I know there's only a few of you here, but why not?
belief in God, not belief in God question, meaning that the cultural heritage of that's why I asked if people have memories or people don't have memories. If people have memories, then that looks very much like secular Europe right now, which does have
The cultural
in the
heritage of
bloodstream
Judeo-Christian
a lot of Judeo-Christian values in a way that
Yes.
would not be true if you were without memory. Right? Would I rather that a child found in a forest be raised in a moderate Muslim household or be raised in a secular communist household?
or a secular atheist household, if I may say.
Again, from which tradition?
Well, but yeah, exactly. That's the point, Alex, is that he's saying it's not about the atheism. It's about the which again is a good point, that it's not really about what you believe, which is my point. It's about how you behave.
Are we talking in the USSR? Are we talking in Britain? Like, what are we talking
We're talking
about
about
here?
Britain.
Okay, so we're talking.
Well, we were talking about the US, but let's say Britain.
In Britain, depends on the strain of Islam. If we're talking about like a liberal form of Islam, which do exist, then probably a liberal form of Islam. If we're talking about a fundamentalist form of Islam, then probably a secular strain of Britain.
Fine. The second point was to say, I mean, you mentioned
So the leftist atheists are going to be a bunch of weak vegans and too malnourished to do much damage. What you mean, bro? What you mean, bro? You're not wrong.
not wanting to just to take scripture at face value. And I understand that the difficulty of taking scripture essentially out of context and trying to take a literal approach where a literal approach isn't supposed to be taken. I mean, people forget that the Bible is a collection of books rather than a book with lots of different
with an oral
genres inside
tradition
it.
and all the
I
rest.
saw I saw a video once of somebody trying to use the Bible to disprove the divinity of Jesus by quoting the book of Job, saying, "God is not a man that I might question him." God is not a man, you see, and I thought not only is this in the mouth of Job, but also, you know, that's the kind of thing that we want to avoid. But it does seem to me that there are some things within religious scripture that do need to be taken seriously.
Oh, come on, guys. We got to split that. We cannot have a split poll. Would you rather a leftist atheist or a radical Muslim? That's all you know about them. We are 50-50. There's two more of you here. Mystic, I know you're over on Twitch, but there's two more of you here. Come on, hit that poll. At least one of you.
And do need to be taken essentially at face value. That is some of the very specific legalistic commandments of the Old Testament, for example, or of the Hebrew Bible, I should say. These are not, when people list these and say that these are potentially morally problematic and may have done something towards hindering, for example, like I mentioned earlier, the abolition of slavery in the United States. Of course, there was a great deal of religious influence on both sides, as which is something that I've already mentioned. But don't you think that this problem could have been solved a lot more easily if there had been a stronger religious tradition of opposition to the ownership of other human beings? Why can't that have been the case?
Okay,
because
so,
Scripture quite explicitly condones and in fact gives you the details of how to do it. That's something that couldn't have been done, in other words, because you've taken
now I guess you tell me to gloss. So
this moral principle that's placed outside of meaningful debate.
Right.
Before we move on, can I ask, where are we getting these buttons from? Are they from Amazon? You know, you press one and everyone's an atheist.
There's this wonderful thing
these available on the market
that I think you both need to use in this conversation, which is imagination.
Oh, right.
So let's
All right. Are we gonna? So let's. Who else? Who didn't vote? Who didn't vote? Vote. Go ahead and vote. Show's over till you vote. Oh, we got two more people. All right. So I'm dying to hear that. But hit that poll, guys. Hit that poll.
as far as why didn't the Bible prescribe the perfect world as I would see it, or as you might see it? And the answer is because two reasons. One, as stated right up top, I'm not God. I assume he has different logic than I do. Mm-hmm. Two, the Bible is in an inherently problematic position in the sense that, on the one hand, it's trying to divulge important truths for all time. At the same time, it's talking to a people of a particular time.
Yes.
And this and that's a big issue. If it's supposed to be universal truths, then you can't be talking about the times.
This is a well-worn tradition inside Judaism. So to take the slavery example, there is no mandate to hold slaves in the Bible. Right? There are lots of mandates in the Bible. Many, many mandates. There's 613 of them.
Hold up, sir. Hold up, sir. This is a gross misinterpretation of the issue with slavery in the Bible. Again, the idea is not that everybody was so in the same way we're talking about with the scientists, that all the scientists were Christian. Yes, all of the religious people, or all of the people in humanity, had slavery. If there was a God, then we would expect that God knows more than those people. So the fact that the Bible is only for the people of the time lowers the credibility by a lot. Because even in the day, if it was fine to have slaves, fine. Bible in 30 AD, great. 2023 though, not really applicable.
According to my religion, right? That's why I do all these weird things that I do. But one of those mandates is not to hold slaves. Right? And so the idea of there was a society that existed at the time of the Bible in which slaveholding was not only ubiquitous, it was universal, and which was true for virtually all of human history.
That's right.
And could be justified not just in terms of religious scripture, but in terms of Aristotelian thought. Right? I mean, the great philosophers we like to cite sometimes in the secular tradition are big fans of slavery.
Yes, but they are not claiming to have divine knowledge. They are human.
And that's true virtually up until the 18th century.
Yes.
So the idea would be, is this verse attempting to woo people away from a tradition of slavery or to humanize the slaves? Or is it attempting to reinforce that by making it harsher and more difficult. And that's why actually one of the things I enjoy doing in terms of how I study the Bible, for example, is I like to look at contemporaneous religious texts of the time. So I like
Nope. If you're going to tell me that your God didn't even know to say, hey, slavery is not a good thing, and that's it, that's not an argument. That's not an argument. Now look at this goddamn poll. Look at this goddamn poll. You guys would rather have a radical Muslim who would kill you.
the idea that
There we
a
go.
divine revelation has to be given to human beings who are capable of following that in the time. Again, that's part of the difficulty of I think rebutting religion in a certain sense, because again, it seems wiggly, but it really isn't, in the sense that if you believe, as I do, in a God who spoke to human beings in some form or fashion and has to speak to them on a level that they can understand, in ways they can understand.
Which he hasn't done for me, just saying. Despite a lot of trying and hoping and begging and crying and pleading.
Then that immediately is going to discount the ability to do a lot of very radical things that would have appeared radical in 1200 BC, but now appear to be commonplace for us.
Yes, I understand.
Zippy said, not if the Bible was meant to be taken as an absolute. Also, the church has edited the Bible so much and made the Bible an absolute. Remember, the Bible is what man heard from God, because humans wrote it down and it became flawed. The church messes up trying to claim absolutes. But then you're not preaching the word of God then. If you, by writing it down, you insert flaw, then it is no longer the word of God. It is the word of man. And you are worshiping the words of men when you are supposed to worship God. It doesn't make any way you twist it. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand how centuries and centuries of millions of new people haven't been like, oh yeah, we don't need that. That doesn't make sense. How?
This argument, and I've heard it many times.
I
must say that it seems strange to me that God does seem willing to completely and utterly condemn a bunch of other practices, including, by the way, imaginary crimes like witchcraft, just done away with entirely. And
but that was for the times. Witchcraft existed in the times, so we certainly had to address.
even if it is the case that God, for some reason, couldn't even hint at the idea that maybe eventually we should be moving towards the abolition of the idea of owning human beings as private property, he just had to condone it.
But yes.
I still think it's the case that he would not permit a flat immorality, and I think you would agree with that too. And so when I open the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, and when I look at the texts saying that if you lay siege to a city, you can kill, if the Lord delivers it into your hand, you can kill the men and the women, you can kill the men and keep the women and the children and the livestock as plunder, as Deuteronomy says. And in the very next verse, the very next chapter says that, if you see a good-looking woman, and I'm not interjecting that, if somebody finds an attractive woman,
yes, if is the actual Hebrew, yeah,
then they can take them for themselves, and if they want them as their wives.
Wait. What did he say is the Hebrew word? Because we're about to use that.
Woman.
Yes, if fatwar is the actual.
A fatwar? She a fatwar. You know what I mean? Bill. So to be fair, nothing in the Bible is the direct word of God, nor does it claim to be. The point of Islam in the Abrahamic tradition is that the Jews and the Christians got it wrong, and the Quran has the direct word of God and his last attempts to save man, and it's still a load of bullshit. No, you are correct, though. As we said, I'm an agnostic. Not my job to uphold their nonsense. Also, the reason they uphold things still is because tradition. Tradition, while pragmatic, does not like change, and flaws last a while. Indeed, they do, apparently so.
Hebrew, yeah.
Then they can take them for themselves, and if they want them as their wives, and they take them home, they shave their head, they cut off their fingernails, they give them 30 days to mourn their old husband, who you may very well have just killed, and then you can take them as your wife. when Numbers 31 has Moses instruct the slaughter of the Midianites, saying, kill all the men, and this time the women get killed too, but not the women who haven't slept with a man. And why might that be? And it says that, keep them for yourselves. And I hear all the time that this is some kind of liberalizing process. Maybe it's because, these people wouldn't survive on their own. It's some kind of protective measure to make sure that you're looking after them. If that's the case, then why does it only apply to the virgins? That seems a little bit suspect to me.
Why does it only apply to the virgins? Just this one chapter. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as male servants do. If she does not please the master who has selected her for himself. And it's probably not talking about her field work. If she does not please the master who selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her, which again means he laid down by. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, that you have to give. Oh, come on.
No, that last point I don't see. So when you say even if he can't abolish the practice altogether, well,
which already
no,
I think he would be able to do.
Right. So the question is whether he can or whether he can't. If he can't abolish the practice, then the idea of wooing people away from a particular type of sin through a gradualistic process is known throughout societies across human history. I mean,
I don't understand the point. I thought God was supposed to be able to do anything. So we said, would you agree? A lot of the problems with the religion stem from how tradition hates change. Or does it just take the edge off dogma, but leave the brunt of it to cause chaos? Yeah, I mean, it really does seem to be that notion of, well, this is how it's been done, and so we can't change things. Yeah, it seems to be that simple.
Gradualistic processes are the way that most things get done across human history. And by the way, the universal practice, unfortunately, up till today in many places in the world, is in fact the extreme version of what you're talking about. Raise everything, kill everyone. Right?
So where's God?
That sort of stuff, unfortunately, does take place, even on planet Earth, even in the year 2023. And so the idea of a culture arising from the Bible that not only abolished slavery on its own shores, but then abolished slavery literally everywhere else, which is what Great Britain did.
Shout out to Bill Bradley. Thank you so much for coming by. You have a good one. There's like 10 minutes left. We may as well just run through it. Let's do it. Oh,
that again, to separate that off from a tradition that also says that every human being is made in the image of God, right? Which is the verse from Genesis, or that you have to treat the stranger well, right? Which is repeated more than any injunction in the Bible, right? There are these traditions that are at war with each other inside the Bible, which is why there is this hotly fought kind of argument inside biblical circles about all of this stuff, which again is one of the reasons why I said right up top that when it gets to, I can't just open the Bible and interpret the text as I would see fit and say, well, I don't like this verse right here.
Contradictory?
What was that?
You say that scripture is contradictory?
Well, I say that scripture is, some scripture is time bound and some scripture is not. So the easy one, the sort of easy way to distinguish is that when the Bible says not to do a thing, then that tends to be non-time bound.
And when it says to do a thing?
And when it says to do a thing, that may be a temporary permission structure, but it could also be a wooing. And by the way, again, I'm not speaking out interpretation of Aisha Fatowar to take a quick example.
Guys, I have no idea what is going on. We got 10 minutes. We are making it through this. We are not leaving until this is goddamn done.
Under the conditions of the Hebrew Bible are immoral.
We are fighters. We ain't going nowhere. We ain't going nowhere.
Ownership of other human beings under the conditions of the Hebrew Bible are immoral.
Yes.
So how do you account for God commanding something which you now see to be, or rather permitting something and explicitly and giving you details about how to do something which is proactively immoral?
Because permitting, he's not permitting me, permitting my great
To do something immoral.
to do something
Immoral.
that in the time was not considered immoral.
It wasn't considered immoral,
Right.
but was it immoral? Now,
And by today's standards, by today's standards
who's
that
the
were
moral
developed by the
relativist?
Judeo-Christian tradition, sure. By today's standards developed under the Judeo-Christian tradition, immoral.
So
Which, by the way,
Wait.
great.
about how to do something which is proactively immoral.
Because permitting, he's not permitting me, permitting my great
To do something
grandfather
immoral.
to do something
To do
that
something
in the time,
immoral.
that in the time was not considered immoral.
It wasn't considered immoral,
Right.
but was it immoral? Now,
And by today's standards,
It wasn't considered immoral. It wasn't considered immoral to own another person. But was it immoral to own another person? Oh, Ben. Oh, Benny boy. Oh, Benny boy. You now have to say that it was not immoral for the Israelites to be slaves. You done fucked up.
now,
by today's
now
standards
who's
that
the
were
moral
developed by the
relativist?
Judeo-Christian tradition, sure. By today's standards developed under the Judeo-Christian tradition, immoral.
So
Which, by the way, you're living off that. You're again, not to get back to the Tom Holland argument.
Cove. Now I see how he's trying to pivot off. He's like, oh shit. He said in the time it was immoral. It was considered immoral. Okay, it was considered immoral, but was it moral or immoral? And now he's fighting it.
I mean, you're living off the remains of this. I mean, where's your morality coming from?
But who's the
living off the remains. So it's not that bad if I say slavery in the Bible is okay because you're living off it. Well, you know what? Despite all of your divine whatever, I can sit here and say that even though they thought this, that, or the other, that slavery is and always has been and always will be wrong. Ben, because of your religion, you cannot or will not say it. Score one for the atheist.
moral relativist now? I mean, it seems that a moment ago you say that the great success of religion is providing a sort of untouchable moral basis that sort of transcends human affairs and human debate.
Well, they are just indentured servants.
And now when I say, well, look at this, open your own religious scripture and look at this blatant immorality, you say, yeah, but well, that was considered to be fine at the time. It's considered to be bad now by the progress of Judeo-Christian
there's a question.
values. Who's the moral relativist here?
Well, it's not relativistic to say that
It's not moral. It's not relativistic to say in this context it was bad, but in this context it's good. Sounds like relativism to me.
a thing that is wrong today is considered wrong today because of a tradition that developed over time.
The question I'm
Going back to good and evil, if you did not keep slaves, you'd have to kill people to manage the population and society. I did miss that. Going back to good and evil, if you do not keep slaves, I have never heard that before. That is a very interesting point. That's Zippy, not me. If that's wrong, but I'm very interesting. Very, very interesting.
asking is not, was it considered right or wrong at the time of biblical
it was
slavery?
wrong.
Was it wrong?
It was wrong then to hold a slave. Yes, it was wrong then to hold a slave.
So God told everybody to do the wrong thing. Why the fuck are we looking at the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, any of it?
Obviously. And also,
Yeah, obviously. Then why the fuck are you sitting here defending the book?
if you are God and you are pragmatically attempting to woo people away from slavery, was it a practicable thing to simply, quote unquote, abolish slavery? Or
How about just say no slavery? Same way they were just like, no murder. Ben, are you under the impression that people didn't murder each other before the Bible? People murdered each other all the fucking time. But God had time for that. He had time to tell you not to jerk off. He had time to tell you not to eat shellfish. He had time to tell you not to wear 2 different types of cloth. But the slaves, we're just wooing you away from it. Okay.
Here's
that
an
in
idea,
the
for
religious
example.
tradition?
In the book of Exodus, God says, I think in chapter 21, maybe 22, says that
think we read this one.
if you have a Hebrew slave, you're to let them go after 7 years.
Yep.
If that Hebrew slave comes to you with a wife, then after the 7 years, you let them go too. If you give the Hebrew slave a wife and they have children, then after those 7 years are up, you give the man a choice. He can go after the 7 years, as per, but
This is real.
you keep his children and his wife.
So I keep his children and his wife, and he can go, or he can stay.
Or, and here the scripture says, you know, if he says, I love my wife, I love my kids, and my master, as if that's going to be one of the principal considerations, then he can stay with you, at which point you take him outside, you pierce his ear like cattle, and he becomes your property for life. Now, here's a suggestion, for example. If it was
How about not? I'm not as smart as Alex, but that's my suggestion. For example, how about not?
already established that Hebrew slaves go after 7 years, and it's already established that if they come with a wife, they can go after 7 years, then if I give them a wife and they have children.
Oh, great timing for that ad. We're not struggling. This is just we are not ad blocking.
Would it not be, it doesn't.
So let's back that and see where we are.
If it was already established that Hebrew slaves go after 7 years, and it's already established that if they come with a wife, they can go after 7 years, then if I give them a wife and they have children, would it not be, it doesn't seem to me particularly revolutionary. It doesn't seem to me the kind of thing that would have caused such social discohesion that God just couldn't have found a way to do it, to say, well, why not let the whole family go free after those 7 years? Bingo! With the knowledge beforehand that if you give this Hebrew slave of yours a wife and children, they'll get to leave with them. That seems to me, for example, a minor improvement that would not cause this kind of revolutionary earth-shifting, he couldn't have just gotten away with slavery. Maybe that's true. But something as obvious as this to me, it seems that if that is the case, that could have easily been done, then the failure to do so and the keeping of that Hebrew wife and their children as the master's property, that itself becomes an immorality that is dictated.
If I agree with your premises, I agree with your conclusion. I
Whoa.
think that the question as to how much social discohesion would it have caused to do a thing is an open question. I think the other.
Bruh. That was the closest thing to a rhetorical question that it could have been. What cope? It's like, well, if you're asking me what could have been, well, I don't know. That's not the point of the question.
I think that the question as to how much social discohesion would it have caused to do a thing is.
He's not asking for an amount, a specific amount. He's asking, well, what would the effect have been? Why wouldn't God have gone this way? If he was he was talking to people who had already owned slaves, and he wanted to woo people away from slaves, and he's not just going to come out with a commandment that says don't have slaves. And what's where is it? Was it this one? Well, whatever. What Zippy was saying about population, all that stuff. Even if, why then can you not shave off the last part where you steal his family? You steal his family. And Ben, remember that Ben is super Jew, Israel, rah, rah. So he is sitting here defending the slavery of Jews. Dogma. You said I read a lot of fiction and some history. Slaves are typically those who have the least amount of power in society. Wow. Yeah, good point. But slavery is how civilizations function, as you do not have technology to replace manual labor, and when you need labor in mass, slavery is the result. In today's terms, those on social aid and in prison or on parole are slaves. Yup. That's facts. That's facts. So mind you, I'm not pro-slavery or anything like that. It's just a functional outcome of past human civilizations. Good caveat. Like that.
Is an open question. I think.
Hey, we got big brain strategies in the building. Welcome to the party, brother. How are you doing? We are finishing up here. I'm heading over. I'm gonna come chill with you. Don't worry. I made a promise. Welcome.
The other question that sort of remains open here is the incentive structure as to whether you accept a wife from your master, right? So I don't want to get into the abstruse. I mean, we can do this literally all day. And there's 70 volumes of the Talmud that are literally about this sort of stuff, and then copious writings in terms of reinterpretation.
Yeah,
of this sort of
And yet none of it said, let the slaves go. None of it.
People to talk about
yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah. This is not the first time these questions have come up. But I think the general point is sort of one where either we can dive into that full time and you can spend your life becoming a rabbi, which, enjoy.
Could happen.
You
Never say
have
never.
the beard for it. Your beard is further along than mine. Or we can sort of, stipulate at the top that there are certain biblical interpretations that are abstruse and difficult.
Yeah.
And that has been a reality of religious life since the beginning.
Well, I can agree with that.
So
That's
we need
certainly
to
true.
we need to step from the past into the future through this conversational
last
portal
leg here
that we've got available to us. Obviously, everyone at this table would agree that holding a slave is wrong, in the same way that the man you kept talking
Except Zippy. Just kidding.
about, who you thought was coming to kill you, we would all agree that that's a problematic thing. And it does seem, so I'm not going to get you to defend this, because I want you to come up with another game show where you solve the future problems of society for us, Alex. It does seem that on an atheist worldview, it is difficult ultimately to say,
yes, it is difficult.
What is good, what is right.
Yes, it is difficult. Anything worthwhile in life is difficult. What was the first thing somebody said? Religion is the quickest and easiest way to move in the right direction.
What is wrong, but we can be practical about it. We can be functional about it. So come on then, for the future, give us some practical secular philosophies that can really help to build social cohesion for the future. You've got about a minute to do that. Then we'll give Ben a minute to respond.
Well,
and then we'll wrap up.
I can
too.
Provide an answer that I don't think will be cause of further debate, which is to say,
that'd be shocking.
Yeah,
I think everything that I've heard you say, Ben, on this subject, and everything that I think you may be about to say, not everything, but some of it, involves saying that, look, what we need to do is encourage strengthening family and having children and not doing drugs and all of this kind of stuff, which people, like you say, have traditionally, this has been somewhat the prerogative of the church to maintain. I think that people just don't believe in God anymore. And so what I would say is just to encourage those things without the God. The question I would leave, and I'm sorry,
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you.
Dude went to Oxford.
Did I tell you?
There's debated some of the greatest minds on either side of this issue.
Exactly what just happened.
So we're both wrong? Okay.
sorry, I've just promised no debate, but here's something. Look, suppose it's the case that I agree wholesale with your proposition that religion is good and maybe even necessary for society in some way, right? Suppose I just say that that's true. I don't believe it's true. I've tried. I'm sorry. I just don't believe it.
I said shit. Me fucking too. Every goddamn day. I am begging to have this solved.
And so I'm now left with a choice here. I don't think it's true, but I become convinced that it's somehow useful or beneficial. What am I to do with this information? You can't just choose to believe in God. People say you can choose to act as though you believe in God. That's kind of true until something really testing comes along if you don't really believe it in your heart.
Same way you can't choose to like chocolate ice cream versus vanilla ice cream. Big Brain Strategy says, looking great, doing great. This is quite the combo. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
You will falter at the first opportunity. How am I to raise my children? Am I to lie to them? Am I to say, well, I don't believe in any of this nonsense, but because I think it, promotes a sort of non-replacement,
Value system or
birth rate.
hierarchy? Yeah.
Then I'm just going to bring them up, be ostensible deontologists
That was really that was a perfect ending. We're just gonna do that because he said so frustrating.
Outgoologists transform before our very eyes into utilitarians on this question, that outgo the idea of being, truthful and being honest and talking about things that you think are philosophically sound. Now it's essentially faith-based, and it's about trying to make as many people, the greatest good for the greatest number across society and societal cohesion, even.
Which is, again, what we talk about when we say morality. So at the end of the day, when you think about one generation, Alex is my age, 30, 32, 30, somewhere around there. He's right around the age millennials are having kids. In one generation, we can shift, we can woo, to use Ben's word, we can woo people away from religion without having to demonize religion. We can just move towards this identity, this American identity that we all share together, that maybe you believe in God, and that's why you think that family is important. Maybe I'm just looking around and I see what happens with democratic policies, so I think the family unit is important. I look, whatever the issue is, as long as we agree on the value, why are we fighting over how we got there? Let's just celebrate the fact that we have people on our backs, with our backs, and go forward with that. That's all we can do, guys. So, I mean, I lost all of everything. I don't know where the super chats are and the comment of the night. I don't even remember what it is. But thank you so much for sticking with me. Those of you guys who did. I have no idea what is going on with the internet, and but you guys are the real ones. Thank you so much for hanging out once again. This is Marty, and I have been your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming. Until I'll see you guys later.